Chapter 2557. Primordial Realm Laws. As soon as the faint, golden flames appeared in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness, they turned into a roaring sea of fire. It formed a blanketing, dazzling golden fire that flooded Jian Chen's entire soul. Jian Chen did not resist at all. At that moment, he understood that his fate was completely up to the expert who controlled the laws of fire. They would only need a single thought to annihilate his soul. This was because the flames were just too powerful. They contained the power of laws, the presence of ways. At their level, they could basically incinerate anything. Grand Prime. This thought appeared in Jian Chen's head. Only Grand Primes could possess such terrifying comprehensions of the laws of fire. However, even though Jian Chen's sea of consciousness was filled with terrifying, golden flames, they did not cause him any harm at all. As a matter of fact, he did not even feel any heat. If it were not for the soul of the spatial insect emperor gradually growing faint under the golden flames, he might have misunderstood and thought the flames were only an illusion. Very clearly, the Scarlet Emperor's grasp over fire had reached an unbelievable level. It was beyond perfection. Jian Chen immediately felt like it had become much easier for him to refine the soul of the spatial insect emperor now that the golden flames had appeared. He could barely absorb it now. The beast's soul contained fragments of the laws of space. The fragments came naturally with spatial insects and were firmly rooted within their souls. It was impossible for any cultivator or space beast to absorb them. However, Jian Chen was an exception. His soul had fused with a strand of true chaotic force, breaking the logic of the world. It had already undergone an unbelievable transformation. Chaos was a supreme power that could contain anything and everything, so what was impossible for others was not necessarily impossible for Jian Chen. After being refined by the flames, Jian Chen absorbed the soul of the spatial insect emperor bit by bit. Immediately, strands of profound, complicated comprehension of the laws of space appeared in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. Jian Chen immediately felt like his own comprehension of the laws of space had been increased drastically. This filled Jian Chen with uncontainable joy. In reality, refining the soul of the spatial insect emperor and obtaining its comprehension of the laws of space had only been a concept the entire time. After all, no one had managed to benefit from a shortcut like this throughout the history of the Saint's world. As a result, he did not hold too much hope in refining the soul of the spatial insect emperor. He had been ready for failure. Now that he discovered that he could directly absorb the spatial insect emperor's comprehension, he naturally ravished with joy. This was a fortuitous encounter that was almost impossible for him to come across in his life. He discovered that absorbing the laws of space from the soul of the spatial insect emperor was not like the situation with the 7 golden cores of laws he previously obtained, which required further comprehension. The soul of the spatial insect emperor directly increased his comprehension of the laws of space. As he absorbed the soul, it was equivalent to directly absorbing the comprehension of laws of space. Jian Chen knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He immediately suppressed his joy and began to focus on absorbing the soul. As the soul was slowly absorbed by Jian Chen, he could clearly sense his comprehension of the laws of space rapidly increase. It had gone from early God King to mid-God King, and then to late God King. Completely submerged in the joy of absorbing the soul, Jian Chen forgot about time and forgot about himself. The only thought he had was to increase his strength as much as possible. His comprehension of the laws of space seemed to increase without stopping. It inched from late God King towards the primordial realm like it was unstoppable. After who knows how long, the golden flames in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness vanished. The Scarlet Emperor had already let Jian Chen out from the heaven-scorching furnace. He clasped his hands and said, "Abbess, the soul of the spatial insect emperor has been completely refined." The Rain Abbess suddenly arrived next to Jian Chen. She stared right at Jian Chen's forehead with her cold eyes as a strange light appeared in them. "You really haven't disappointed me," the Rain Abbess murmured. At that moment, her gaze towards Jian Chen changed slightly. It was as if she was looking at a monster. This child can actually directly absorb the laws of space from the spatial insect emperor. I've never seen or heard of anything like it. However, it seems like his soul is rather special, the Scarlet Emperor said as he stared at Jian Qin in a strange light as well. It's exactly because his soul is different that he can achieve this, the Rain Abbess said coldly, but her gaze remained fixed on Jian Chen's forehead. With that, the Rain Abbess waved her hand gently. The Scarlet Emperor naturally understood what the Rain Abbess was trying to convey. She was telling him that he had completed his purpose here and could leave now. The Scarlet Emperor did not show any displeasure towards the way the Rain Abbess treated him. He stowed his heaven-scorching furnace away and clasped his fist at the Rain Abbess before leaving where she cultivated. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, it had already been half a month. During this half a month of absorption, Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of space had formally reached the primordial realm. After reaching the primordial realm, he advanced one more step, reaching the second heavenly layer. After reaching the second heavenly layer, Jian Chen finally stopped, as he discovered that he was unable to absorb the comprehension of the laws of space anymore. It was as if his soul had become full, unable to hold any more fragments of the laws of space. If he wanted to absorb more, he needed to strengthen his soul. A shortcut is still a shortcut in the end. It's not as reliable as comprehending it personally, thought Jian Chen. He knew his soul was definitely not only as strong as a second heavenly layer infinite primes. It had reached the third heavenly layer at the very least. However, his comprehension of the laws of space just happened to stop at the second heavenly layer. Regardless, he was satisfied, as he had elevated the comprehension of another law, aside from the way of the sword, to the primordial realm. If he used the two laws together, his battle prowess would increase significantly. Of course, the most important aspect was that the laws of space could be used in ways beyond fighting. It's a pity that I can't absorb the energy in the spatial insect emperor's soul, or my soul will definitely reach a whole new level. Jian Chen felt a sense of pity. Jian Chen's attention returned to his body. He discovered that he was still lying in the wooden bucket, but the green liquid in there had become cloudy. The medicinal effects had been completely absorbed by him. Jian Chen leapt out from the wooden tub and looked at the beautiful, white figure nearby. He immediately bowed and said, "Thank you for your bestowal, Abbess." Chapter 2558, Chaotic Space opens. You don't need to thank me. The reason why I saved you is all for his sake, or you definitely would not be alive for intruding upon where I cultivate alone, the Rain Abbess said coldly. She did not care about Jian Chen's gratitude at all. Jian Chen smiled resplendently and said nothing else. He could already tell from the Rain Abbess's behavior that the only reason why he was still alive was because of that mysterious figure. Otherwise, the Rain Abbess would never have spared him even if she learnt that his soul was special and had fused with a strand of true chaotic force. However, Jian Chen could not figure out who that mysterious figure was. As a result, he did not try to think about his identity anymore. As for the Empyrean demon cult, they've stolen my innate orchid of 5 elements, along with a large quantity of innate spiritual mud and innate spiritual liquid. All of these come from the Xianhuang microcosm and possess Xianhuang qi. They're invaluable. If they don't give me a satisfactory explanation for this, I'll never drop the matter. The Rain Abbess' voice was chilling cold as soon as she mentioned the Empyrean demon cult. She was extremely furious. Afterwards, Jian Chen was asked to leave. Jian Chen emerged from where the Rain Abbess cultivated. When she arrived before the protective formations around the forbidden grounds, the formations ripped open by themselves, revealing a 3-meter-wide tunnel that led right to the outside world. Jian Chen passed through the formations smoothly and appeared in the depths of the imperial palace. A middle-aged man with a striking appearance seemed to have been waiting there for him for a long time now. The man stood there in his dragon robes. He was the emperor of the Cloud's Urge Empire, Din. As if Yizhan had especially waited there for Jian Chen, his eyes lit up, and he studied Jian Chen as he said, "The abbess has orders for me to take you off the Delight Plain safely. Come with me." However, as soon as Jian Chen emerged from the forbidden grounds behind Yizhan, figures flickered in the surroundings. Over a dozen experts of various ages basically appeared at the same time, surrounding Jian Chen. They all gave off powerful presences. Without any exception, They were all primordial realm experts. They consisted of infinite primes and chaotic primes. Why would it be him? He's actually still alive? Emperor, this person stands with the Empyrean demon cult. Now that the Empyrean demon cult has become our empire's mortal enemy, we cannot leave him be. We need to execute him immediately. Emperor, please execute this person immediately. The primordial realm experts looked at Jian Chen coldly, showing heavy killing intent. Yi Zhan's face sank. He gave off the bearing of a ruler, and he glanced around in a dignified manner. He said sternly, I am under the abbess' orders to escort this person off the Delight Plain safely. Why don't you all back off? What? The abbess? The expressions of all the experts changed when they heard that word. That single word seemed to be magical, stunning them all. He clearly intruded on the forbidden grounds, yet the abbess hasn't killed him? This doesn't make sense. This person is with the Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean demon cult has caused our Cloud's Urge Empire heavy losses. A few primordial realm experts murmured. However, their killing intent did not decrease. Instead, they were unwilling to accept this. If you want to kill me, come find me on the Cloud Plain. However, you infinite primes really might not be able to kill me, Jian Chen said calmly and fearlessly. Now that his laws of space had reached the primordial realm, his confidence had swelled. With his laws of space and laws of the sword combined, along with his various techniques, he was confident about dealing with any infinite prime. Afterwards, he vanished from before the primordial realm experts, without leaving a single trace behind. The laws of space. The eyes of the primordial realm experts around Jian Chen narrowed. No. Why do his laws of space seem rather different from the laws of space I've seen in the past? He hasn't created any pulses at all, a chaotic prime said sternly as he expressed his surprise. He has already arrived in a city 10 million kilometers away. Strange, why does he leave no trace behind when he uses the laws of space? There isn't even a pulse of the laws of space. Even Yi Zhan was surprised. He looked at where Jian Chen had vanished from as he felt emotional turmoil. This seems like the ability of spatial insect emperors. Only spatial insect emperors, which are born with a grasp over space, can move about silently such that no one can sense them. Afterwards, Jian Chen found an interplanar teleportation formation and left the Delight Plain. With Heya beside him, he had already confirmed that there was no one else he was familiar with left on the Delight Plain. Whether it be Su Ran or the protectors from the Tianyuan clan, they had all left the Delight Plain with the Empyrean demon cult. There was obviously no need for him to stay. The experts of the Cloud's Urge Empire did not stop Jian Chen, allowing him to return to the Cloud Plain smoothly. Before long, Jian Chen returned to the Tianyuan clan. As soon as he returned, Su Ran, newbies, Ming Dong, Shiyu, and the others all crowded over, hurrying over as quickly as they could. Su Ran, newbies, and the protectors had returned 3 days ago. Jian Chen, you finally returned. I heard that you were trapped in the Cloud's Urge Empire on the Delight Plain. If you still didn't return, I planned on going back and calling for reinforcements so that we could kill our way into the Cloud's Urge Empire, Ming Dong said. He was also relieved by Jian Chen's safe return. If it were not for the fact that he had learnt that Jian Chen was in no danger from Su Ran, Ming Dong would have never waited until now. He would have returned to the heavenly palace of Bisheng for reinforcements a long time ago. Brother, you've made me sick with worry. Fortunately, the Grand Elder didn't trick us. The Rain Abbess of the Cloud's Urge Empire really didn't make things difficult for you. Newbies exhaled deeply before making his way over to Jian Chen's side. He whispered mysteriously, "Oh right. Brother, what's your relationship with the Rain Abbess? Why hasn't someone as powerful as the Rain Abbess made things difficult for you?" Jian Chen did not go into detail about what he experienced in the Cloud's Urge Empire. He had a simple conversation with everyone before immediately entering seclusion. He had made great advancements in his laws of space, but he had not completely absorbed the soul of the spatial insect emperor. Most of it still lingered in his sea of consciousness. He needed to check on the situation immediately to see whether the lingering power would result in any consequences. On the distant Prosper Plain, the grand heavenly palace of Bisheng stood at its center. A hazy figure obscured by the light of ways sat on the highest floor. This figure was one of the 7 past grand exalts of the saints' world, the Inata Grand Exalt. Suddenly, the Inata Grand Exalt opened her eyes. She looked at the sky with her cold, emotionless eyes. Her gaze seemed to able to pierce through everything, allowing her to see the origins of the world. The chaotic space has finally opened, the Inata Grand Exalt said gently. Her voice seemed to possess all the sounds of the world, making it impossible to detect its basic nature. A pulse appeared in her cold, emotionless pupils that could look down on everything at that moment as well. Bai Rong, immediately go to the cloud plane and fetch your junior brother. Yes, master. Chapter 2559. The Grand Exalts depart. Jianchen sat 3 inches above the ground within a secret room in the Tian Yuan clan. He inspected his soul and his sea of consciousness. A white mist hovered within a region of his sea of consciousness. This mist came from the soul of the spatial insect emperor. Right now, it was more like pure laws of the world than the soul of the spatial insect emperor. This was because all that remained was soul energy that contained the comprehension of the laws of space after the Scarlet Emperor's refinement. Jianchen treated the beast's soul with great value, as he had only consumed less than 1/10, or an even smaller fraction, of the beast's soul to reach a comprehension at the 2nd heavenly layer of infinite prime. If he could completely absorb the laws within the beast's soul, his comprehension of the laws of space would reach chaotic prime at the very least. There might even be the slightest possibility of him directly reaching Grand Prime. Jianchen did not dare to consider Grand Prime right now. He would be satisfied even if he could only reach chaotic prime. Ziying, Qing Su-a, help me check if there are any issues with the spatial insect emperor's soul. Has its consciousness been completely destroyed? Jianchen called for the sword spirits. Jianchen did not dare to treat the remaining soul energy from the spatial insect emperor carelessly. The spatial insect emperor was a grand prime after all. It was extremely terrifying. If its consciousness had not completely vanished, if even a tiny sliver of it remained, that would be a devastating problem for Jianchen. It would be able to maneuver all the soul energy lingering in his sea of consciousness easily with any remaining consciousness. While Jianchen remained in seclusion, an unwelcomed guest appeared in the Tian Yuan clan. She was a young woman who seemed to be in her 20s. Even though she seemed just like a mortal, without giving off any indication of cultivation, her bearing was otherworldly, and she was pretty enough to outshine the moon. She had come alone, appearing in the Tian Yuan clan silently. The powerful formations personally cast down by Ming Xie in the surroundings of the Tian Yuan clan did not seem to be able to stop her. It was as if she could move through the impenetrable Tian Yuan clan as she wished. No one discovered her. This woman was the 8th Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, Bai Rong. Junior brother? Bai Rong appeared outside a hall in the forbidden grounds of the Tian Yuan clan and called out gently. Her voice directly penetrated the many formations around the hall, ringing out inside. Very soon, the entrance to the hall opened up. Ming Dong emerged with the princess of the Thousand Lotus Empire, Yun Xiaoyan. He was both surprised and in joy. At the same time, the divine general of the heavenly palace of Bisheng, Ming Xie, also appeared to another side. He bowed towards Bai Rong and said, "Greetings to the 8th Majesty. 8th Senior Sister, why have you come?" Ming Dong arrived before Bai Rong in a hurry and invited her in warmly. Bai Rong was the person Ming Dong was closest with in the heavenly palace of Bisheng. As a result, Ming Dong held much respect towards this senior sister of his. "Junior brother, I've come this time under Master's orders to fetch you," said Bai Rong. "To fetch me? But 8th Senior Sister, I like this place very much. I don't want to return right now." Ming Dong refused without any hesitation. Bai Rong was not angered. Master is about to go on a distant journey, so she won't be able to protect you at all times. Moreover, the heaven-splitting ancestor has tried attacking you in the past, so it's very dangerous for you to remain outside. Then that's even more reason why I can't leave. What if the heaven-splitting ancestor turns his attention towards the Tian Yuan clan? Senior sister, just go back. I'll watch over the Tianyuan clan, Ming Dong replied without a second thought. Seeing how Ming Dong had made up his mind, Bai Rong knew that she could not persuade him. She could only take him back forcefully. After careful consideration, Bai Rong did not end up doing that. She sighed gently before she turned around and left. A day later, the Inata Grand Exalt stood up in the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The light of ways permeated his surroundings as they resonated, making him seem like he had fused with the ways. He represented the will of the world just by standing there. His figure was hazy, filled with a sense of mysteriousness. Afterwards, he took a step. Immediately, the stars revolved, and the world receded. He seemed to cross the entire saint's world with that step, crossing an unbelievable distance. It was as if he had reached the boundary of the universe. The space before him was chaotic. The laws were a mess, and the 5 elements were completely reversed. There was no order at all. This was the boundary of the saint's world. The chaotic space was filled with various violently energies that could seemingly obliterate anything. This was not a true chaotic space but the boundary of a world. The Inata Grand Exalt stood before the boundary. Afterwards, he gently swept across it with his finger, directly ripping it open and leaving the saint's world. On the Devour Plane, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt stood in a blood-red divine hall. He was surrounded by a dense layer of blood-like mist. He warned the 9 Brilliant Star Lord sternly. The chaotic space has opened. I'm going there in search of ancient chaos chi. I don't know when I'll return, but while I'm gone, you must be careful with your actions. Do not infuriate Inata. Yes, Master, replied the 9 Brilliant Star Lord politely from below. The Blood Tier Grand Exalt left the Devour Plane. He chose to go to the world boundary elsewhere, ripping it open and leaving the saint's world. A graceful, handsome young man strolled through the gardens on the sacred mountain where the 9 Brilliance Star Lord cultivated on the Star Brilliance Plane. A group of people followed him closely. Most of them were great beauties. Their eyes were filled with infatuation as they giggled and cast flirtatious glances towards the young man. It seemed like as soon as the young man gave them a signal, these young ladies from large clans would throw themselves at him without any hesitation, offering up their bodies and souls. The young man seemed to enjoy this very much. At this moment, 2 beautiful women clung to his left and right arms. He smiled evilly, burying his face in the chests of the 2 women from time to time. He was enchanted by it. Everyone knew about this young man. He was the young Star Lord. It just happened to be 1,000 years since the young Star Lord had started cultivating. He had reached late God King. However, he was definitely someone who could act as he wished, and the large organizations would never dare to offend him on the Star Brilliance Plane. Instead, these organizations would do everything that they could to establish good terms with him or rope him in. He possessed an extremely great status. This was all because his foster father was the supreme existence of the Star Brilliance Plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Young Star Lord, there's no need for you to submerge yourself in these common appearances. Even if you combine all the women behind you, they're going to be nowhere near as great as the prodigy of the Taoist sect of divine sound, Shangguan Mu'er. This Shangguan Mu'er is the only successor of the 3rd ancestor. Whether it be her beauty, strength, or potential, she's far greater than these common people. Dao Gongming followed closely behind the young Star Lord. He did his best to speak of all the positive features that Shangguan Mu'er possessed, doing his best to make the young Star Lord take notice of her. He knew the young Star Lord was lustful. As long as he saw Shangguan Mu'er's beauty, he believed that the young Star Lord would become enchanted. Stop exaggerating things to get attention, young Master Gongming. I've heard of this Shangguan Mu'er as well. She's only a regular woman. She's nowhere near as impressive as you are describing her to be. The women around the young Star Lord rolled their eyes at Dao Gongming and retorted. The young Star Lord was their target. How could they let someone else steal the young Star Lord's attention? Tian Yao, come meet me immediately. At this moment, a voice that only the young Star Lord could hear rang out in his head. This voice came from the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Chapter 2560. The calm before the storm. Tian Yao was the young Star Lord's name. Not a lot of people knew this name. Aside from the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, basically everyone referred to Tian Yao as the young Star Lord. When he heard the message, the young Star Lord's frivolous expression immediately stiffened up. He could not help but grow stern. He showed respect and fear. The young Star Lord had been raised in lavish conditions where he was fawned by all. Wherever he went in the saints' world, he would be surrounded by a group of followers and admirers. All experts treated him politely, so he had a fearless personality as a result. He would only feel fear when he faced his foster father, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Consequently, the young Star Lord did not hesitate at all when he was summoned by the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. He pushed the two beautiful women in his arms away without a second thought and rushed off to the peak of the mountain. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord sat in the main seat within a majestic divine hall on the top of the mountain. His presence was completely concealed, making him seem like a mortal. However, his eyes that were as deep as the cosmos stared off into the distance blankly as if he was in thought. "Greetings, Father." The young Star Lord arrived. He was polite and directly dropped to the ground on his knees. His voice seemed to snap the 9 Brilliant Star Lord back to his senses. His gaze changed as soon as he returned to himself. It became rather mixed. He stared at the young Star Lord below with an indescribably gaze. He remained silent for a long time. Seeing how his father had not responded despite such a long time, the young Star Lord developed doubts. This was the first time he had seen his foster father act like this in the 1,000 years he had been alive. However, the young Star Lord dared not talk too much. He understood that his foster father was proud. If his foster father did not speak, he dared not speak either. "Tian Yao, how many years has it been since you began cultivating?" Only a long while later did the 9 Brilliant Star Lord ask slowly and calmly. "Father, I just happen to have cultivated for 1,000 years, the young Star Lord said politely. "Just 1,000 years, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord murmured. "Just how short is 1,000 years? That might only be a blink of an eye. However, you've managed to reach late God King in a single millennium. Even across the entire Saints world, there are probably only a handful of people who can match such talent. It's no worse compared to the me of the past. If I create a new space for your growth, your future accomplishments will be unlimited." The 9 Brilliant Star Lord was right. People who could reach late God King in just 1,000 years were indeed mystical existences in the Saints' world, as most people would require tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years to accomplish the same thing. It was basically unprecedented to reach God King in just 2 or 3 centuries like what Jian accomplished. Of course, reincarnations of powerful experts were exceptions. As a result, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord was extremely satisfied with the young Star Lord's current accomplishments. As a matter of fact, he would take pride in it. "It's all because of Father's support," the young Star Lord said extremely modestly, but he felt complacent inside. "All right." The 9 Brilliant Star Lord raised his head slightly. He stared at the young Star Lord with mixed feelings and said, "Tian Yao, just cultivating doesn't mean you can become a true expert. So it's about time for you to go out and train. You can't return until you reach the primordial realm. Do you understand? As Father wishes, you're not allowed to take too many experts with you this time. I'll only let you take a single infinite prime. Bear that in mind." After the young Star Lord left, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord sat on his throne as he stared outside with mixed feelings. He murmured to himself, "For the sake of the grand scheme of things, I can only sacrifice you, Tian Yao." The 9 Brilliant Star Lord suddenly seemed like he was peering into something. He peered into the young Star Lord's future course of life and secretly made various arrangements, ensuring that the young Star Lord's future path would follow what he secretly planned. This matter relates to the Inata Grand Prime. I can't interfere with it too much, nor can I make it too obvious. I need to be careful with everything. The young Star Lord returned to the bevy of women. He looked at the young ladies around him as he felt great reluctance. He understood that he could not take a single woman with him due to his foster father's orders. He could not afford to face the consequences of angering his foster father. The young Star Lord felt a natural sense of fear towards the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. After all, the 9 brilliant Star Lord was a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime, a figure only second to Grand Exalts. He was on a completely different level, and he was strong enough to crush all weaker cultivators. I'm about to go out and train, so I probably won't be able to accompany you all from today onwards, the young Star Lord said reluctantly. As he looked at the beautiful figures of the women, a nefarious light lit up in his eyes. Young Star Lord, allow me to properly treat you tonight then as a parting gift. Immediately, a woman giggled pleasantly like a chime. In the crowd, Dao Gongming immediately rejoiced. He said, "Young master, the cloud plane just happens to be a perfect place for you to train. All right. I'll go straight to the cloud plane tomorrow." Master has departed. A lady surrounded in blinding light hovered in a foreign space within the saint's world. She accompanied the sea of stars as all the laws resonated with her, as if she had completely fused with the surroundings. She was the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing Exin. Many fragments of planets floated through the sea of stars where Exin stood. The space there had just settled down as well. She had clashed with the heaven-splitting ancestor here earlier, crushing countless celestial bodies and punching a hole through space. The area had only just recovered. And you still don't want to return? It's not up to you anymore. Suddenly, Exin muttered and extended her hand directly into space. The entire arm vanished. At the same time, a pulse of energy terrifying enough to cause despair surged forth in the southern region of the cloud plain. It caused the entire region to shake violently, and even the entire cloud plain trembled. The sky above the Pingtian Empire shattered, and a hand completely condensed from energy descended, heading right towards the Tian Yuan clan. Bang, bang, bang. All the formations around the Tian Yuan clan were completely useless before the hand. All of them shattered to pieces as the hand fell. Boom. In the end, the hand of energy smashed through a divine hall in the Tian Yuan clan and grabbed Ming Dong from there. First Majesty. To another side, Ming Dong's bodyguard, Ming Xie, appeared. He stared at the hand from the sky and showed respect. He bowed in a hurry. He dared not try to stop it. Chapter 2561. The young Star Lord's arrival. Basically, the moment that Ming Dong was taken away, Jian Chen appeared before the destroyed divine hall. His laws of space had already reached the primordial realm, so he appeared here from the secret room with just a thought. He had basically teleported over. Jian Chen stared at the destroyed divine hall and the ruined formations in the surroundings of the clan. He was stern. Brother Dong. Brother Dong. Brother Dong has been taken away. The princess of the Thousand Lotus Empire, Yun Xiaoyan, ran out from the ruins in a hurry. She had paled in fright. She was the princess of the Thousand Lotus Empire and a supreme god king on the god king's throne, so she should not have become so flustered. However, the hand that had appeared earlier possessed a supreme pressure and a terrifying presence. It had directly struck fear into her heart, throwing her mind into disarray. Uncle Ming, what's this all about? Brother Dong has been taken away. Yun Xiaoyan ran over to Ming Xie and looked at him pleadingly. On the other hand, Jian Chen clearly remained more composed. He also looked at Ming Xie, waiting for his reply. He knew Ming Dong and Ming Xie's identities. As his protector, it simply did not make sense for Ming Xie to do nothing now that Ming Dong had been taken away. There's no need to panic. It's the First Majesty. Ming Xie said to Yun Xiaoyan before looking at Jian Chen. Since the 9th Majesty has departed, it's time for me to go as well. Thank you for taking care of the Tian Yuan clan in the past, Senior Ming. Jian Chen clasped his fist at Ming Xie and said sincerely. Patriarch, what happened? At this moment, Shiyu, newbies, and the other members of the upper echelon arrived as well. All the protectors of the Tian Yuan clan also came. A hand had fallen from the sky and destroyed all the formations around the Tian Yuan clan. The disturbance created was just too great, having shaken up the entire Tian Yuan clan and provincial city. As a matter of fact, all the experts on the cloud plane had sent the senses of their souls over to check on the situation. This included the ancient existences of the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance. What a terrifying pulse of energy! The pressure is enough for me to shake. The Tianyuan clan has faced another disaster. Who was the person who did it? Did they have grievances with the heavenly palace of Bixing? That's not likely. Ming Xie is a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Looking at how calm he is, there's clearly something strange about this. What a terrifying hand. It seems like it comes from a woman. Out of all women, there are only a handful who have reached such a terrifying level of cultivation. I know who she is. She's the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing. As the powerful senses of the souls came in contact with one another, they began to converse. Among the 49 great planes of the saints' world, the cloud plane was more undeveloped and weaker. Across all these years, the strongest expert they had given birth to was only a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime. Who knows when was the last time a fifth heavenly layer Grand Prime appeared? As a result, now that a supreme expert had done something on the cloud plane, it naturally shook up the entire place. It made all the experts uneasy. Ming Dong has been taken back by the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing. With this, all the experts on the cloud plane learnt that Ming Dong had left. Only a single divine general from the heavenly palace of Bixing remained in the Tianyuan clan. The divine general from the heavenly palace of Bixing, Ming Xie, has left too. That Princess Yun Xiaoyan of some Thousand Lotus Empire left with Ming Xie as well. Before long, the peak figures of the cloud plane all witnessed Ming Xie and Yun Xiaoyan step onto an interplanar teleportation formation before vanishing from the cloud plane. It should be because of the heaven-splitting ancestor. The first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing has been chasing him around in the saints' world. The grievance is definitely deep. Last time, the heaven-splitting ancestor even came to the cloud plane and tried to take Ming Dong away. In the end, he was stopped by the First Majesty. Now that the First Majesty has taken Ming Dong away, it's clearly to stop the heaven-splitting ancestor from doing anything to Ming Dong again. All the peak experts knew the reason. This instead made them treat Ming Dong with even greater importance. This was because the two matters allowed them to clearly see just how important Ming Dong was to the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing. She basically went to whatever lengths she had to go to protect him. Of course, they did not know Ming Dong's true identity. They still believed that Ming Dong was the First Majesty's disciple. In the Tianyuan clan, Jian Chen stared at the damaged divine hall. He seemed to be in a daze. Ming Dong had left. The divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing had left as well. The Tianyuan clan seemed to have returned to the past. He knew that all the status and glory that the Tianyuan clan possessed came from Ming Dong and Ming Xie. Now that they had left, he expected the Tianyuan clan's status to plummet. Although there was still Su Ran, how could she be compared to a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing? Suddenly, Jian Chen looked at the sky. He frowned slightly. He could sense several dozen powerful senses of the soul moving around in the air. Moreover, these were only the senses of the soul that he could discover. There would definitely be more hidden away. All the formations cast down by Ming Xie have been destroyed. I should be able to repair them a little, said Su Ran before immediately beginning to fix the formations. Jian Chen, what should we do next? Shiyu arrived before Jian Chen. She was basically responsible for all the miscellaneous matters of the Tianyuan clan now. If people don't make trouble for us, we won't make trouble for them. Let's continue like before, Jian Chen said calmly. The cloud plane settled down very soon. It was as if it had returned to its past quietness. The disturbance from the Tianyuan clan gradually faded away as well. Although Ming Dong and the Divine General's departure had completely changed the Tianyuan clan's force of deterrence, there was still no one willing to provoke them. On this day, the interplanar teleportation formation newly erected by the Four Symbols Alliance suddenly shone with dazzling light in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. When the light faded away, two figures appeared in the teleportation formation. One of them was a graceful, handsome young man. His head was slightly tilted back as arrogance filled his face. As he looked at the people in the surroundings, his gaze was filled with a hint of contempt. The other person was an old man. He seemed like an old servant. He did not seem special and stood out in no particular way. However, this old man was a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. It was just that he had hid his cultivation very well, so ordinary people could not tell his strength. "Young master, we've arrived on the cloud plane," the old man said to the young man carefully after emerging from the teleportation formation. He acted extremely submissively. Although all primordial realm experts were figures who would enjoy some status in any organization, the young Star-Lord's identity was just too special. He was the only child of the 9 brilliant Star-Lord. As a result, even though the old man was a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime, he still acted politely before the young Star-Lord. Chapter 2562. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor. As the young Star-Lord set foot on the cloud plane, a ruddy old man in azure robes sat within the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance, cultivating in seclusion. This old man was one of the 5 experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. People called him the Gentle Breeze Ancestor. Suddenly, the power of laws around the Gentle Breeze Ancestor pulsed. He slowly opened his eyes. Strange? Why did my heart tremor? It's as if something is about to happen. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor furrowed his brows and murmured to himself. Afterwards, he formed a seal with his hands. The light in his old eyes deepened as he began to peer into the heavenly secrets. The countless stars twinkle as they welcome him. Someone of extraordinary status has arrived on the cloud plane. This person is a terrifying force who can affect the future of our Four Symbols Alliance. Very soon, the Gentle Breeze Ancestor's eyes lit up. He expanded the tremendous senses of his soul to envelop the entire cloud plane. Just who is this important figure? I found him. Is it him? The Gentle Breeze Ancestor's eyes narrowed, and he vanished. No wonder the cloud plane basically ranks at the bottom of the 49 great planes in the Saints' world. The origin energy here is far thinner than our star brilliance place. In the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, the young Star-Lord studied his surroundings like he was judging it, gently shaking his head. The cultivators here are so weak. It's such a big city, and there are only so many God Kings. They completely pale to our star brilliance plane. The young Star-Lord looked at the surrounding cultivators with some disappointment. As if he was better than them, his face carried some scorn and contempt. The star brilliance plane is under the watch of the famed 9 brilliant Star-Lord. A single thought from an expert like the 9 brilliant Star-Lord can change the fortune of an entire plane. Our measly cloud plane naturally pales in comparison. At this moment, an old voice rang out. An old man in azure robes appeared before the young Star-Lord silently. He stroked his beard as he smiled pleasantly. He was one of the 5 peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance, the Gentle Breeze Ancestor. Old man, who are you? How dare you eavesdrop on my words? You sure are bold. The young Star-Lord crossed his arms and became displeased. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor's expression stiffened when he was called an old man despite being one of the peak experts of the cloud plane. He was slightly angered, and his smile disappeared as well. He said indifferently, "People call me the Gentle Breeze Ancestor." If it were not for the fact that the Gentle Breeze Ancestor found out the young man was of extraordinary origins and could affect the fate of the Four Symbols Alliance, the Gentle Breeze Ancestor would have never been so friendly. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor? One of the 5 grand exalts of the Four Symbols Alliance? A gleam of light flashed through the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime old man's eyes. He looked at the Gentle Breeze Ancestor without any particular feelings and said, "This is the young master of the star brilliance plane. People call him the young Star-Lord." The young Star-Lord? The Gentle Breeze Ancestor was surprised when he heard that. He stared at the young Star-Lord in shock as he became unsettled. So it's the young Star-Lord who has come to visit. I've failed to anticipate your visit, so please forgive me. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor immediately changed his attitude. All the displeasure he felt vanished. Although he had never seen the young Star-Lord before, he did know quite a lot about him. He was the only child of the 9 brilliant Star-Lord and was not in existence that he could afford to offend. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor's attitude changed completely. With a face full of smiles, he politely invited the young Star-Lord to visit the Four Symbols Alliance. At the same time, he began to peer into the young Star-Lord's identity. If the young Star-Lord was lying, the Gentle Breeze ancestor could easily peer into his past and future with his cultivation as a second heavenly layer Grand Prime. If he really was the young Star-Lord, then the Gentle Breeze ancestor definitely would not be able to see anything with the 9 Brilliance Star-Lord's protection. As a result, determining the true identity of the young Star-Lord was very easy to some peak experts. However, in the next moment, the Gentle Breeze ancestor's mind suddenly shuddered. 9 brilliant balls of light suddenly appeared in his mind as he peered into the matters of the young Star-Lord. They possessed a supreme pressure and a presence revered by all. It's the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord. The Gentle Breeze ancestor was surprised. He actually saw an apparition of the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord. With that, there were no longer any doubts about the young Star-Lord's identity. The Gentle Breeze ancestor dared not neglect him. As a matter of fact, he began treating the young Star-Lord with importance that even exceeded Ming Dong. However, the young Star-Lord was proud. He did not take the Four Symbols Alliance seriously, turning down the Gentle Breeze ancestor with a single sentence before drifting away. Young Star-Lord, our Four Symbols Alliance still happens to bear some influence on the Cloud Plane. If our Four Symbols Alliance can assist the young Star-Lord in any shape or form in the future, please come to our headquarters directly. Alternatively, you can crush this jade talisman. The Gentle Breeze ancestor tossed a jade talisman to the young Star-Lord's bodyguard. He did not remain any longer because he knew that doing so would only create an opposite effect. After returning to the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance, the Gentle Breeze ancestor immediately called the 4 other decision-makers together. The 5 experts gathered together in a majestic hall. What? Gentle Breeze, you say that the legendary foster son of the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord, the young Star-Lord, has come to the Cloud Plane? The 4 others were surprised when they received the news. The Gentle Breeze ancestor nodded and said, there are no doubts about his identity. He's indeed the young Star-Lord from the Star Brilliance Plane. The young Star-Lord's foster father is the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord, and behind the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord is the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. We can't allow anything to happen to the young Star-Lord on the Cloud Plane, or we will face a crisis. The 4 other people were stern. They reached the same, terrifying conclusion very soon as well. Although they were also Grand Primes, they were all early Grand Primes. The disparity between them and the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord, a 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime, was like the glow of the moon compared to the radiance of the sun. They were on completely different levels. The young Star-Lord's safety is obviously extremely important. However, his arrival is a great opportunity for our Four Symbols Alliance to change our fate, said the Gentle Breeze ancestor slowly. The Lord of the Heavens Link peak of the Righteous Alliance reached the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer many years ago. Now that the heavenless demon Exalt is dead, he has become the undisputed strongest expert on the Cloud Plane. Who knows when he'll break through to the 4th heavenly layer? However, I am certain that the day the Lord of the Heavens Link peak breaks through is the day that our Four Symbols Alliance will be destroyed. As a result, we need to establish ties with someone powerful if we want to continue existing. Chapter 2563. The Might of the Laws of Space. The Gentle Breeze ancestor's words made the 4 other supreme experts of the Four Symbols Alliance sink into deep thought. All of them furrowed their brows sternly. They all understood that while the Four Symbols Alliance and Righteous Alliance seemed to have agreed to a ceasefire on the surface, this was only temporary. This had only happened because the Four Symbols Alliance had gained a Grand Prime, lessening their difference in strength compared to the Righteous Alliance. Coupled with how the people of the Righteous Alliance were not in complete agreement, prioritizing their own safety in battle without going all out, the Righteous Alliance could not help but agree to a ceasefire with the Four Symbols Alliance. Once the Righteous Alliance gained the power to crush them in an overwhelming manner, the ceasefire agreement would be no different from a thin piece of paper. As a result, the Four Symbols Alliance was indeed in desperate need of allying themselves with someone or something powerful. The young Star-Lord's appearance has indeed given our Four Symbols Alliance an opportunity. We have to rope him in regardless of the price, and we also have to keep the matter of the young Star Lord an absolute secret so that the Righteous Alliance doesn't learn about him. I hope that the young Star Lord won't be as unapproachable as Ming Dong. The Four Symbols Alliance made their decision very quickly. Jian Chun cultivated within his residence inside the Tianyuan clan. Suddenly, there was a knock on his door. After he gave them permission to enter, Shi Yu, who was responsible for most of the affairs in the clan, hurried in. Shi Yu, what has made you so hurried? A gleam of interest flashed through Jian Chen's eyes when he saw how hurried Shi Yu was. Patriarch, someone has come to visit. He said that he's the young Star Lord of the Star Brilliance Plane. I don't know who the young Star Lord is, but he seems to come from very great origins. As soon as he stated his identity, Senior Su immediately told me to come find you secretly, Shi Yu said in a hurry. She realized that this person's identity was probably extraordinary since Su Ran had personally spoken on this matter. Basically, everyone knew what the young Star Lord represented on the Star Brilliance Plane, but everyone who knew the name was basically important figures or people of great origins beyond the Star Brilliance Plane. Shi Yu clearly was not on the level where she could come into contact with such information, so she naturally did not know who the young Star Lord was. The young Star Lord of the Star Brilliance Plane. Jian Chun furrowed his brows. He had been to the Star Brilliance Plane, so he had naturally heard about the young Star Lord before. When he crossed through space on a spatial battleship, he had met many juniors of peak clans who went as far as to cross the Sea of Stars just to congratulate the young Star Lord on his birthday. As a result, he was familiar with the young Star Lord. He was the foster son of a supreme expert, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. His identity was extraordinary. Jian Chun stood up and left his residence. He went to the hall that was specially used to receive esteemed guests and saw the legendary young Star Lord. Currently, the young Star Lord sat lazily in a chair. His legs were placed on the table before him as he played around with a spiritual fruit in his hand. He seemed very bored. The old man who had come with him stood beside the young Star Lord quietly like an old servant. Jian Chun looked at the young man. He studied him as he clasped his hands. You must be the renowned young Star Lord. Greetings. I am the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jian Chun. The young Star Lord did not adjust his posture. He looked up and glanced at Jian Chun. He took him lightly. Jian Chun? I've heard of you. You got real lucky somewhere and picked up the Anata Tower, and then you fled across the Saints' world. In the end, you hid on the desolate plain for a few years. The young Star Lord said indifferently, but his attitude and tone exposed his contempt. Jian Chun smiled indifferently, acting as if he could not hear the young Star Lord's tone at all. He said relaxedly, the young Star Lord possesses a great status and identity, yet you've heard of me. That's a great honor for me. The young Star Lord clenched his hands slightly and crushed the spiritual fruit he was holding. Milky white juice flowed out, filling the entire room with a heavy fragrance. Although the spiritual fruit had not reached the god tier, it was not of a low quality. It was extremely valuable, such that even across the entire Tianyuan clan, there were not many of them. You're actually using such low-quality spiritual fruits to receive your guests. Isn't the Tianyuan clan far too stingy? Or should I say that the Tianyuan clan doesn't take me seriously? The young Star Lord shook his hand in disdain as if he was afraid that the juice would dirty him. Before Jian Chun could reply, he continued, you were hunted down by so many experts, yet you're still able to survive until now. I need to say that you have really good luck. Of course not, young Star Lord. I only barely survived, Jian Chun said without any particular modesty or haughtiness. As he looked at the fruit that the young Star Lord had crushed, a sliver of coldness appeared in his eyes. He said, the Tianyuan clan is only a small place, nowhere close to being as wealthy as the Star Brilliance Plane. Please forgive us if we've received you poorly. Enough, you don't need to explain anymore. I know your Tianyuan clan is only a small clan on the Cloud Plane. Whatever you can take out will naturally be unpresentable to those of higher status. Call Shangguan Muir over. I've come to the Tianyun clan to meet the successor of the third ancestor, the young Star Lord said arrogantly. I may have to disappoint the young Star Lord. Muir is currently in secluded cultivation, so she's not meeting anyone. Jian Chen's voice gradually turned cold. He finally understood why the young Star Lord had come now. The young Star Lord's face immediately sank when he heard that. His gaze became piercing. How dare you? The old man behind the young Star Lord called out. His presence as a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime radiated outwards, crushing down on Jian Chen in an overwhelming manner. He growled and said, "Didn't you heard what the young Star Lord said? As long as the young Star Lord wants to see someone, it doesn't matter who she is or what she is doing. She is supposed to stop whatever she's doing and come here immediately." Jian Chen stood still under the presence of the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. His eyes became cold as he stared right at the old man and young Star Lord sharply. He said, "Muir's cultivation is more important than anything else. Even if your foster father, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord, was here, I would not let him interfere with Muir's cultivation, let alone you. Jian Chen, how dare you speak ill of the Star Lord?" The old man was furious. Like a bolt of lightning, he flew towards Jian Chen. He had already readied his hand to slap Jian Chen. However, at this moment, the surrounding space began to pulse and distort slightly. Afterwards, the old man became as slow as a snail. He should have been as swift as lightning, but he became as slow as a regular human. He leapt 2 meters away, and at the same time, he had already swung his hand, hitting nothing with a cold gust of wind. His posture seemed extremely strange. He was over 10 meters away from Jian Chen. In the end, all that happened was that he jumped 2 meters and swung his hand. The laws of space. The old man narrowed his eyes in surprise. He had never heard that Jian Chen's laws of space had reached such a level from the information he possessed. Chapter 2564. Attendant? The young Star Lord's expression became rather ugly. Originally, his bodyguard had wanted to teach Jian Chen a lesson, but in the end, the bodyguard made a fool of himself under the influence of the laws of space. This left the young Star Lord humiliated. After all, he was the young Star Lord, a supreme existence on the Star Brilliance plane. His foster father, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord, was a peak expert only second to Grand Exalts in the Saints' world. No matter where he went, he was respected and revered, where no one dared to offend him. But now, he had received such treatment in the Tianyuan clan, which made the young Star Lord furious. However, just when the young Star Lord was about to throw a fit, a powerful sword intent suddenly permeated the surroundings. At that moment, the young Star Lord felt like he had become submerged in a domain of sword chi. Sword chi filled every inch of the space around him as if the region around him had become a sea of sword chi. Jian Chen had drawn the 9-star sword of heavenly ways and 9 illusionary stars had appeared. With hazy starlight he directly stabbed out. With that, the space pulsed, and the sharp tip of the sword seemed to stab through space, directly vanishing. However, in the next moment, the tip appeared out of nowhere in front of the young Star Lord's bodyguard. With powerful sword chi, it stabbed forward like it was unstoppable. Oh no! The old man's face changed drastically, becoming filled with shock. He could sense lethal danger from the strike. He was a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. It should have been easy for him to deal with Jian Chen, but now that he had discovered that Jian Chen could actually threaten him, he was filled with disbelief. Jian Chen's attack used the laws of space. Not only was it unexpected, but it was extremely fast as well, so the old man could not respond in time. Spurt! The tip of the sword stabbed into the old man's chest with powerful sword chi and the power of stars. The old man could not even dodge or block Jian Chen's attack. The strike was just too quick, and it was even enhanced with the laws of space, making it even more difficult to guard against. The scene right now was extremely strange. Jian Chen stood over 10 meters away in a posture of stabbing out. However, only half of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways was visible. The tip appeared over 10 meters away, buried in the old man's chest. It seemed like the sword was broken. This was the wondrous use of the laws of space. He could use the laws of space to directly affect the space there. Jian Chen's hand trembled, and the sword immediately erupted with sword chi, blowing open a bowl-sized hole in the old man's chest. His body flew out of the hall from the great force. The young Star Lord was stunned. He stared at Jian Qin and the old man blankly. He was left at a temporary loss. He had never thought that there would actually be someone bold enough to heavily injure his bodyguard in his face in the saint's world. This was the first time something like this had happened to him in his 1,000 years of being alive. Squads of armored guards surged over from everywhere outside the hall. They surrounded the old man. Even a few infinite primes had come. "Patriarch, do we arrest this person?" Protector Shui clasped his fist outside. Ever since he was saved by Jian Qin on the Delight Plain, Protector Shui served the Tianyuan clan with even greater loyalty. "There's no need. Everyone can go, including you." Jian Qin stowed his sword away slowly and said with composure, "Yes, sir." With that, all the guards outside the hall immediately vanished. Even the infinite primes had left. It would be best if not too many people knew about this matter, or it would have a negative influence on the Tianyuan clan. After all, the Tianyuan clan no longer possessed Ming Dong. "Young master, I'm useless. I'm not Jian Chen's opponent." The old man stood up and arrived before the young Star Lord, telling him in shame. He coldly glanced at Jian Chen from time to time. "You useless trash, piss off." The young Star Lord's expression was very ugly. He glanced past Jian Chen with a sunken face and said in a cold voice, "The Tianyuan clan, what an impressive clan, to disrespect me like this. Do you believe that I can wipe you off the surface of this world with a single word? Even your merit with the heavenly palace of Bixing won't be able to keep you safe." The young Star Lord was completely fearless. He was still very confident, showing no fear towards the heavenly palace of Bixing at all. According to his knowledge, the heavenly palace of Bixing no longer possessed a grand exalt. They only survived because of their first majesty, while he had the blood-tier grand exalt behind him. "Is there a need for you to be so angry, young Star Lord? My master and the renowned Star Brilliance Star Lord had close ties. Speaking of the past, why must we juniors make our seniors unhappy? Young Star Lord, don't you agree?" A pleasant voice rang out. The voice seemed to be enchanting, enough to sway the minds of people. Those with weaker wills would probably fall into a trance the moment they heard this voice. The young Star Lord's eyes became lost at that moment as well. It was like his soul had been stolen. He subconsciously answered, "Yeah." However, right after he had said that, he immediately returned to his senses. A gleam of interest immediately flickered through his eyes, and he stared at the entrance. Shangguan Mu'er walked through the entrance in her violet dress. She was graceful and slender, possessing great beauty and an otherworldly presence. Her dark eyes were as deep and profound as onyx, and her pupils shone with a wondrous charm. Just a single glance seemed to be enough to steal the souls of people. She was extremely beautiful, almost picturesque and unrealistic. She was flawless. Even in the vast saint's world that was filled with talents and beauties, there were not many people who could match up to her. "Mu'er, why have you come?" Jian Qin frowned slightly. The young Star Lord had originally come because of Mu'er. Now that she had actually come here, the situation became even more difficult to deal with. "The 9 Brilliant Star Lord is an acquaintance of my master. Since the young Star Lord has come, it only makes sense for me to come meet him," Shangguan Mu'er said gently. She carried the zither of the demonic cry in her arms habitually, arriving beside Jian Qin. "You're the successor of the third ancestor, Shangguan Mu'er? The successor of the third ancestor truly does have a justifiable reputation. Even I almost fell for your tricks." The young Star Lord stared at Shangguan Mu'er with shining eyes as his heart beat heavily. He had already heard about how beautiful Dao Gongming had described Shangguan Mu'er to be on the Star Brilliance plane. Back then, he did not take it too seriously. He only thought it was exaggerated. However, now that he had personally seen Shangguan Mu'er, he understood that he was wrong. Shangguan Mu'er really was as pretty as Dao Gongming had described her to be. Not only did she possess the beauty of a goddess, but Shangguan Mu'er even possessed a unique bearing that deeply attracted the young Star Lord. Shangguan Mu'er frowned. Her voice immediately became cold as she said, Young Star Lord, please watch yourself. Do not disrespect my master. The young Star Lord seemed to become rather infatuated. He stared straight at Shengguan Mu'er as his eyes burned with interest. She has already departed. Is there a need to be so uptight? I just happen to be lacking a female attendant now that I've come to the cloud plane to train. Shengguan Mu'er, just be my female attendant. Serve me until my training ends. I'll ignore the disrespect the Tianyuan clan has shown to me in return. Chapter 2565. Tossed out of the clan, Shengguan Mu'er stiffened slightly when she heard the young Star Lord's words. She stared at the young Star Lord in disappointment and sighed gently. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord is renowned, a supreme figure in the saints' world, revered by all. But I never thought that his foster son would be like this. Young Star Lord, you have disappointed me far too much. You are not worthy of being the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's son. The young Star Lord's eyes turned cold from that. He immediately slammed the table. How dare you speak ill of me? Shengguan Mu'er, do you really think that I'm afraid of touching you just because you're the successor of the third ancestor? If you anger me, do you believe that I only need a single sentence to make you kneel before me, where your life will be in my hands? The young Star Lord was extremely furious. Who was he? He had once been someone that everyone would butter up to no matter where he went, yet he had been looked down upon again and again now that he had come to the Tianyuan clan. He felt like he had been disrespected. He struggled to accept this. Shengguan Mu'er sighed again. Young Star Lord, you're too much of a wastrel. You need to understand that you're only a god king, and all your glory comes from the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Without the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, you're only a cultivator with a little talent. Is there any need for you to be so arrogant? Shengguan Mu'er did not become angered for the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's sake because she had heard from the wind ancestor of the Taoist sect of divine sound that the 9 Brilliant Star Lord had indeed been on good terms with the third ancestor. However, Jian Chen was not as forgiving at Shengguan Mu'er. The young Star Lord's words had completely infuriated him. His eyes were icy cold as killing intent appeared. He said coldly, "Make Mu'er kneel? Hold Mu'er's life in your hands? I don't believe you have that capability." Jian Chen had already arrived before the young Star Lord as he said that. He directly grabbed the young Star Lord by the neck and said, "My Tianyuan clan does not welcome you. Piss off." With that, Jian Chen tossed the young Star Lord away in an extremely brutal manner. The young Star Lord was unable to resist at all. He was thrown high into the air, flying directly over the walls of the Tianyuan clan before landing on the ground outside in an extremely miserable state. Young Master! The expression of the young Star Lord's bodyguard changed drastically. He glared at Jian Chen before leaving the Tianyuan clan in a flash. Mu'er, you shouldn't have come. The young Star Lord is a wastrel, and by the looks of him, he's extremely lustful. Now that he has seen you, he'll probably never forget about you and stop at nothing because of you. Jian Chen turned around and said to Shengguan Mu'er after tossing the young Star Lord out. It was as if he had just completed a task not worth mentioning. Shengguan Mu'er sighed gently. She was extremely disappointed. I only came to see the young Star Lord because of the close ties my master had with the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. After all, no matter how you look at it, the young Star Lord is the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's son. But I never thought he would actually be such a person. It was my miscalculation. Young Master, are you fine? The young Star Lord's bodyguard, Mu Lin, carefully helped the young Star Lord up from the ground outside the Tianyuan clan. His face was sunken and killing intent surged in his heart. The young Star Lord possessed such great status, yet he had been tossed out by the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. In Mu Lin's eyes, a humiliation so great could only be settled with blood. The young Star Lord said nothing. He stared at his dusty, luxurious robes. Currently, he was rather stunned. Who's that? It looks like he was thrown out of the Tianyuan clan. At this moment, a discussion broke out. Nearby, a luxurious carriage slowly pulled past. The voices of a few young people rang out from it. These people were all envoys sent from large clans or organizations across the cloud plain to visit the Tianyuan clan. Such people would basically appear at the entrance of the Tianyuan clan daily. And there's someone injured. It looks like the two of them aren't welcomed by the Tianyuan clan. They probably broke some rules set down by the Tianyuan clan, which was why they were taught a lesson by the experts of the Tianyuan clan. You can tell with a single glance that the two of them aren't from our cloud plane and that they had no idea that they should not offend the Tianyuan clan. They tried to abuse their background and status against the Tianyuan clan and were punished as a result. Who do they think they are, to even disrespect the Tianyuan clan? There's no one who can protect them for doing something like that to our Tianyuan clan. The carriage slowly pulled away, but the young Star Lord heard every single word that was uttered. In particular, when the young Star Lord heard their contemptful scoffs taking him lightly, he found it to be jarring to the ear. Like needles, the discussion stabbed at the young Star Lord deeply, causing him to tremble uncontrollably. The Tianyuan clan. The Tianyuan clan. The young Star Lord said through gritted teeth. He looked back at the Tianyuan clan as killing intent filled his eyes. Afterwards, he turned around and left. He left the Dongan province. He left the Pingtian Empire. At the same time, the Gentle Breeze ancestor opened his eyes in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. A smear of surprise appeared in his eyes. The young Star Lord came out from the Tianyuan clan so soon, but it seems like something is off. Has he come into conflict with the Tianyuan clan? The Gentle Breeze ancestor constantly paid attention to the young Star Lord. When the young Star Lord entered the Tianyuan clan, he was unable to see what had happened in there because Su Ran had repaired some of the formations. Only when he left the Tianyuan clan and the Pingtian Empire did he see something from the young Star Lord's bodyguard, Mu Lin. He immediately managed to infer what had happened in there. The young Star Lord has fallen out with the Tianyuan clan. One of them has the 9 brilliant Star Lord behind them, while the other has the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. This will be a difficult matter to handle. The Gentle Breeze ancestor furrowed his brows as the light in his eyes flickered. But very soon, Gentle Breeze ancestor made up his mind. At that moment, he had already made an important decision. He contacted the 4 other people of the Four Symbols Alliance before vanishing strangely. "Young master, where are we going now?" Mu Ling asked carefully outside the Pingtian Empire. He had most recovered from his wound with God-tier pills, so he was basically fine now. The main reason was that Jian Chen had not been vicious, only teaching him a simple lesson. Otherwise, his wounds would have been even more severe, and it would have been even more difficult for him to recover. The young Star Lord paused. He sank into his thoughts, and he would glance past the majestic fortress behind him from time to time. His eyes were filled with coldness. "Young Star Lord, our Four Symbols Alliance has already prepared a banquet to specially welcome the young Star Lord after his long journey. We do hope the young Star Lord can grant us the honor of visiting our Four Symbols Alliance so that we can fulfill our duties as hosts." The Gentle Breeze ancestor suddenly appeared and said sincerely with a smile. "All right, since your Four Symbols Alliance is so kind, I can only disturb you then." The eyes of the young Star Lord lit up. This time, he accepted the Four Symbols Alliance's invitation without a second thought. It's no disturbance. It's no disturbance at all. The young Star Lord is too kind. It is our honor for you to be able to visit our Four Symbols Alliance. The Gentle Breeze ancestor was extremely polite. In order to ally themselves with him, the Gentle Breeze ancestor basically put down all of his pride as a peak expert. After all, this was a major matter that controlled the fate of the Four Symbols Alliance. Chapter 2566. The Young Star Lord's Revenge. The young Star Lord was treated as an honored guest in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. He was warmly received by the most important members of the Four Symbols Alliance. Apart from the Gentle Breeze ancestor, the 4 other peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance appeared as well. They all smiled and treated the young Star Lord very politely. "Yeah, your Four Symbols Alliance is not bad." The Four Symbols Alliance's attitude swept away the young Star Lord's gloom. As if he had regained his confidence, he immediately stood with his chest held high, his face full of pride. The special banquet of the Four Symbols Alliance was to welcome the young Star Lord after his long journey. There were only 6 people at the table. Aside from the young Star Lord and the Gentle Breeze ancestor, the 4 others were all decision-makers of the Four Symbols Alliance. One of them was a burly, middle-aged man. His presence was concealed, and he gave off no pulses of energy at all. He seemed just like a mortal. He was Zheng Hu, the peak expert of the Four Symbols Alliance who had broken through recently. The second person was a bald old man. He wore gray robes and seemed to keep an extremely low profile. He seemed very old and had a face filled with wrinkles. Even his ancient eyes were dim. He seemed lifeless. He was Changfeng Yun. Originally, he was the ancestor of the Changfeng clan, a peak clan in the central region of the Cloud Plain. The third person was an old woman. She held a wooden staff, keeping her presence concealed like she had returned to her most basic form. She did not seem to have any special features. This old woman was Gong Ji. Originally, she was the ancestor of the Gong family, a peak clan in the central region. As for the fourth person, he was a man who seemed to be in his 30s. He wore white clothes and seemed refined and rather scholar-like. He was called Wulu. Originally, he was the ancestor of a peak sect in the central region, the Snow Mountain sect. Of course, these so-called clans and sects had all become things of the past. Now, all the organizations they controlled had merged together into the current Four Symbols Alliance. As soon as they heard the young Star Lord's evaluation of the Four Symbols Alliance, they secretly rejoiced. The Gentle Breeze ancestor immediately said, "The young Star Lord has only just come to our Cloud Plain, so you might not be particularly sure about the situation on the Cloud Plain. Moreover, the young Star Lord is such a great existence that there probably aren't many places on the Cloud Plain that can match the young Star Lord. Our Four Symbols Alliance just happens to be a place worthy of the young Star Lord, so if the young Star Lord has nowhere to go, you are more than welcome to temporarily settle down in our Four Symbols Alliance." Our Four Symbols Alliance is one of the 2 rulers of the Cloud Plain after all. We possessed abundant resources and great strength. Our Four Symbols Alliance will try to satisfy all of the young Star Lord's requests to the best of our ability, Zheng Hu said among the 5 expert. He was doing his best to rope in the young Star Lord. As long as they managed to ally themselves with the young Star Lord, they would truly have no need to fear the Righteous Alliance anymore. Even when the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak broke through to the 4th heavenly layer, he would not dare to touch them. "You will satisfy all of my requests?" The young Star Lord said slowly as a cold light flickered in his eyes. "Of course," said the Gentle Breeze ancestor with confidence as his gaze became extremely deep. "All right then. I just happen to have a request right now. I didn't bring any particularly powerful guards with me on my journey to the Cloud Plain, but the Tianyuan clan offended me recently. I hope you can take action immediately and destroy the Tianyuan clan. Leave none alive aside from Shangguan Mu'er," said the young Star Lord frigidly. The forces he brought with him this time were insufficient, so he could only seek foreign help to destroy the Tianyuan clan. The 5 experts of the Four Symbols Alliance were not surprised at all when they heard that the young Star Lord wanted to destroy the Tianyuan clan. They all remained very composed. "Young Star Lord, the Tianyuan clan has the support of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. If we destroy the Tianyuan clan, we'll definitely offend the Heavenly Palace of Bishing," the Gentle Breeze ancestor replied, troubled. "What are you scared of?" "So what if they have the Heavenly Palace of Bishing?" The young Star Lord was confident, looking down on everything in the world. Indeed, he possessed the right to do so to a certain degree with his identity and status. His foster father was the 9-brilliant Star Lord, a supreme expert who stood at the same level as the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Most importantly, his foster father had a grand exalt backing him up. On the other hand, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing only had a First Majesty. The young Star Lord did not take the Heavenly Palace of Bishing seriously at all. "Feel free to do it. If the Heavenly Palace of Bishing interferes, I'll stand forward. I would like to see just how bold the Heavenly Palace of Bishing is." Young Star Lord considered himself above everyone else as he spoke arrogantly. "Of course, if you're afraid, I'll pay a visit to the Righteous Alliance." The young Star Lord glanced past the 5 supreme experts fearlessly. The young Star Lord may not know it, but the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak from the Righteous Alliance had close ties with the Tianyuan clan. In the past, when one of their members, Houston, was in danger in the central region, he was saved by the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, Zheng Hu said. The Righteous Alliance also has the young master of the Tong family, Tong Tian, who has close ties with Jian Chen as well, the Gentle Breeze ancestor added. The young Star Lord frowned when he heard that. He vaguely sensed that getting the Righteous Alliance to destroy the Tianyuan clan might not be very realistic. In the end, after a series of discussions, the Four Symbols Alliance did not agree to the young Star Lord's request of destroying the Tianyuan clan. Instead, they gave him some experts under the guise of being his guards. They would be specially in charge of his safety on the cloud plane. All of these guards followed the young Star Lord's commands. These guards were not weak. There were 3 fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes and 2 fourth layer chaotic primes. They were great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance. Aside from all that, there were over a dozen infinite primes as well, along with a great group of godhood guards. This force was no weaker than the Tianyuan clan. As a matter of fact, it even exceeded them. The Four Symbols Alliance's plan was extremely simple. They would not directly take part in anything. Instead, they would give the young Star Lord a group of experts for him to use against the Tianyuan clan. That way, even if the heavenly palace of Bishing was offended, the young Star Lord would be the one to bear the burden. Even if the heavenly palace of Bishing decided to look into the matter, the Four Symbols Alliance had plenty of reasons to explain that they were uninvolved. The Four Symbols Alliances wanted to ally themselves with the young Star Lord without falling out with the Tianyuan clan. The Four Symbols Alliance is a group of cowards. They're even afraid of offending a mere Tianyuan clan. The young Star Lord returned to the residence that the Four Symbols Alliance had prepared for him after the banquet. He was unhappy. Young Master, you can't actually blame the Four Symbols Alliance for this. After all, the Tianyuan clan does have the support of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing is too tremendous of an existence to the Four Symbols Alliance. However, the Four Symbols Alliance is still rather thoughtful. The guards they've arranged for Young Master are enough to destroy the Tianyuan clan. The young Star Lord's bodyguard, Mu Ling, said to one side, according to reliable sources, the Tianyuan clan only has a single 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime old woman left out of all their true experts. The rest are all infinite primes. On the other hand, the young Star Lord has 3 5th heavenly layer chaotic primes and 2 4th heavenly layer chaotic primes. This force is enough to deal with a 6th heavenly layer chaotic prime. Contact the 5 great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance and immediately set off with me. I'll go destroy the Tianyuan clan right now. As for that successor of that 3rd ancestor, I'll definitely give her proper treatment, the young Star Lord said through gritted teeth. As soon as he thought of Shangguan Mu'er's great beauty, he felt his insides flare up. Chapter 2567. Flames of War. Very soon, the 5 chaotic primes assigned to the young Star Lord appeared before him. The 5 of them were all ruddy old men in pure white clothes. They seemed rather sagely. They were figures who possess authority in the Four Symbols Alliance, all holding the position of Great Elder. They basically stood above most people, where only the 5 ancestor-like figures across the entire alliance could order them around. However, when they faced the young Star Lord, they dared not put on any airs at all. They concealed their presences and did their best to appear ordinary, clasping their fists at the young Star Lord politely. He was the child of the 9 brilliant Star Lord. His status was simply too great. Who knows how many years it had been since someone with a status like him had appeared on the cloud plane. As a result, the 5 of them appeared to be overcautious before the young Star Lord. They understood that, let alone them, chaotic primes, but even the peak experts of the cloud plane were nothing in the eyes of supreme experts renowned across the Saints' world like the 9 brilliant Star Lord. The 5 of you immediately gather everyone and go destroy the Tianyuan clan. I don't want the patriarch, Jian Chen, to live for a day longer, the young Star Lord said coldly. What he went through in the Tianyuan clan was the greatest humiliation in his life. He could only wipe this humiliation from the slate with the blood of the entire Tianyuan clan. However, when the 5 great elders heard his demand, their faces changed slightly and became ugly. They glanced at one another and communicated secretly. Although we're the young Star Lord's guards, and we need to listen to him for everything, we'll probably be doomed after the heavenly palace of Bishing decides to look into the matter if we really listen to him and destroy the Tianyuan clan. That's right. The young Star Lord is the 9 brilliant Star Lord's son. The heavenly palace of Bishing naturally won't make things difficult for the young Star Lord for the sake of the 9 brilliant Star Lord, but will face a different situation. With the young Star Lord's ability, he probably won't be able to protect us from the heavenly palace of Bishing unless the 9 brilliant Star Lord steps forward. Do you think the 9 brilliant Star Lord will personally stand up for us? Is that even a question? Why would the 9 brilliant Star Lord fall out with the heavenly palace of Bishing just for us? A few puny chaotic primes. The 5 elders were all monsters who had lived for who knows how long. Naturally, they were not dim-witted, so they thought of a lot in that moment. They communicated secretly such that both the young Star Lord and his bodyguard, Mu Lin, failed to sense it. The Tianyuan clan cannot be destroyed, the 5 great elders thought as they reached the same conclusion. They wanted to ally themselves with the young Star Lord, yet they dared not offend the heavenly palace of Bishing either. Seeing how the 5 great elders still did nothing, the young Star Lord's face immediately sank. He said with displeasure, "Why aren't you doing it? Haven't you heard my words?" One of the great elders smiled resplendently and said, "Young master, please listen to something I have to say." "Speak." The young Star Lord seemed impatient. Since the Tianyuan clan has offended young master, we naturally have to make them pay a heavy price. However, if we destroy them in one stroke, it'll be far too easy on Jianchen. As a result, we should gnaw away at the Tianyuan clan step by step and gobble them up bit by bit. We need to make them slowly approach hell whilst being filled with helplessness and despair. Wouldn't that be more interesting than directly destroying them? Said a great elder. The young Star Lord thought about it carefully. Gnawing away at the Tianyuan clan such that Jianchen could only watch on powerlessly was indeed more interesting than directly destroying them, so he directly agreed to the great elder's suggestion. 3 days later, as the current emperor of the Pingtian Empire, Mo Xingfeng, managed the affairs of the empire from his study, one of his personal guards hurried in from outside. He dropped to one knee and said, "Your Majesty, we've just received urgent news that the eastern boundary has suddenly been invaded. The walls of the fortress have fallen, and the generals have fallen in battle as well. Our armies have lost several 100,000 people, and they're in a state of disarray right now." "What?" The emperor of the Pingtian Empire's face changed. The report in his hands fell onto the table as he leapt to his feet. He said sternly, "Who is it that has attacked our Pingtian Empire?" "Your Majesty, according to the reports, it's an organization that has never appeared on our cloud plane. Their banners bear 9 brilliant stars." 9 brilliant stars? Mo Xingfeng frowned. He thought through all the organizations on the cloud plane, but none of them used stars on their banners. "Report." At this moment, another guard hurried in. He dropped to one knee and said, "Your Majesty, the Western Fortress has brought urgent news. An unknown army has attacked our western boundary. The boundary has given way, and the army stationed there has fallen in battle. Report." "Your Majesty, the southern fortress has suddenly been attacked. The fortress has fallen, and we've lost 1,000,000 troops. In a short span of time, the eastern, western, and southern boundaries of the Pingtian Empire were all attacked. All the fortresses fell. The Pingtian Empire that basically no one dared to offend in the past due to the Tianyuan clan's connection with the heavenly palace of Bishing suddenly faced an unprecedented threat." Mo Xingfeng became extremely stern. The fortresses of the Pingtian Empire were extremely sturdy. They were reinforced with various formations and defensive equipment. Even against the strongest army on the cloud plane, they would be able to stave them off for 10 days. Yet now, the 3 fortresses had fallen to attacks in such a short amount of time. This could only be achieved if powerful primordial realm experts personally took action. The matter was so severe that it had already gone beyond what the Pingtian Empire could handle alone. Activate the short-range teleportation formation. I need to pay a visit to the Tianyuan clan immediately. Mo Ling hurried out of the study sternly. He made his way to the Dong'an province as quickly as he could. The large discussion hall of the Tianyuan clan was currently full. All the members of the upper echelon and a few protectors were gathered there. The dragon-robed Mo Xingfeng had already taken a seat there calmly. All of them were extremely stern. None of them uttered a word, making the atmosphere rather heavy. They were all waiting for someone, the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jian Qin. I already know about it. At this moment, a calm voice suddenly rang out in the quiet discussion hall. The space on the empty patriarch's throne suddenly twisted slightly, and Jian Qin appeared out of nowhere. He glanced past everyone below. He was extremely calm. I originally thought they would directly attack our Tianyuan clan, but I never thought they would target the Pingtian Empire. Jian Qin was calm and unflustered. The powerful senses of his soul had already enveloped the entire empire. He already knew about the situation in the east, south, and west completely. Only the northern boundary remained fine, as it bordered the Heavenly Moon Empire. Chapter 2568, Jian Qin's Counterattack. Patriarch, may I ask who the invading organization is? They're clearly declaring war on us. They've taken 3 of our fortresses and millions of soldiers have fallen in battle, Mo Xingfeng said in great pain. The death of millions of soldiers was an extremely heavy loss for the Pingtian Empire. It would directly affect the overall strength of their empire. After all, the Pingtian Empire had only progressed from a divine kingdom to an empire recently. It was impossible for them to rival those ancient empires that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years. As a matter of fact, over 70% of the troops in the entire empire were stationed at the 4 fortresses. Now that they had lost 3 of them, the Pingtian Empire immediately suffered great losses. Shi Yu, who handled the day-to-day affairs of the Tianyuan clan, had a frigid expression as well. She said coldly, in order to build the 3 fortresses, our Tianyuan clan used up a tremendous amount of resources. Now that the 3 fortresses have been destroyed, the losses are extravagant. There's also the several million soldiers who have fallen in battle. This debt can only be settled with blood. Just a few months ago, I stationed 1,000 of my brothers from the Sword God army at the Eastern Fortress so that they could go out for training whenever they wished. Now they're all dead as well. We can't just let this be, Newbies added coldly from his seat. His voice was filled with killing intent. The Sword God army was the army of the Tianyuan clan composed of their greatest elites. There were only 10,000 of them, and they were all godhood cultivators. Now that they had lost a tenth all of a sudden, Newbies felt pained. Obviously, we have to get them to pay this debt with blood. Even if they are the 4 Symbols Alliance, I'll make them regret this. Jian Qin sat on the Patriarch's throne as he stared right at the 4 Symbols Alliance frigidly. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and see where the 4 Symbols Alliance stood. However, when the upper echelon of the Tianyuan clan heard him mention the 4 Symbols Alliance, all of their expressions changed. Even the expressions of a few people who had spoken out righteously about revenge became warped. It's actually the 4 Symbols Alliance. Newbies grinded his teeth. His face was utterly sunken. The 4 Symbols Alliance is far too shameless. When Ming Dong was here, they were as obedient as a dog, following along with everything. They would do whatever we told them to, even saying that they were eternal friends of our Tianyuan clan. And now, as soon as Ming Dong left, they've directly turned against us, attacking our Pingtian Empire. Patriarch, what should we do now? Shiyu asked. Their opponent was the 4 Symbols Alliance, one of the rulers of the Cloud Plain. Shiyu had no idea what to do. She understood the power of the Tianyuan clan extremely well. Without Ming Dong, it was impossible for them to repel the 4 Symbols Alliance. Do exactly what I just said. We'll settle this debt with blood. Senior Su. Jian Qin said coldly before calling for Su Ran. His voice directly passed through the various formations, ringing out where Su Ran cultivated. In the next moment, Su Ran appeared within the discussion hall. She said nothing. With her cultivation as a chaotic prime, there was not a lot that could be hidden from her. She understood the current situation even better than Jianchen. As a matter of fact, she knew that the 3 fortresses had been instantaneously destroyed by 3 chaotic primes. The fortresses of the Pingtian Empire were extremely tough, reinforced by various powerful formations. It was impossible for God Kings to get through them, and they could last a few days against even infinite primes. Only chaotic primes could destroy them immediately. "Senior Su, please come with me to go kill," Jianchen said to Su Ran. Su Ran nodded. There are a total of 5 chaotic primes. 3 of them are at the 5th heavenly layer and 2 are at the 4th. There's also another 16 infinite primes. Currently, 3 chaotic primes are at the eastern fortress, one's at the southern and one's at the western. They've split up their armies and infinite primes, approaching the imperial capital of the Pingtian Empire from 3 directions. Su Ran paused when she reached there. She continued, "The chaotic prime at the southern fortress is the weakest, at the 4th heavenly layer. Who do you want to kill first?" They've sent 5 chaotic primes all of a sudden. The 4 Symbols Alliance sure takes us seriously. Jianchen sneered. He said coldly, "Naturally, we kill the weakest one first. Let's use one of their chaotic primes to remember the brave souls of all our soldiers that have fallen in battle first. Patriarch, this matter is very important. You must not be reckless." A skinny old man stood up and clasped his fist towards Jianchen sternly. He was Protector Qi. He possessed the same cultivation as Protector Shui. They were both 7th heavenly layer infinite primes. Out of all the protectors of the Tian Yuan clan, only he and Protector Shui were late infinite primes. Protector Qi explained in a hurry when he saw Jianchen look over, "Patriarch, the 4 Symbols Alliance is one of the rulers of the Cloud Plane. They're extremely powerful. Aside from chaotic primes, they even have grand primes. I think it would be best if we don't come into conflict with the 4 Symbols Alliance. After all, young Master Ming isn't present. Once we aggravate them and they send grand primes, the consequences will be even more severe." Protector Qi's eyes were clearly filled with some fear. This was fear towards the 4 Symbols Alliance. Grand Prime. A gleam of killing intent flashed through Jianchen's eyes. He said coldly, "So what if they have grand primes? If they really dare to do anything, I'll make them lose a grand prime or 2. Jianchen's words left Protector Qi tongue-tied. Jianchen and Su Ran left the discussion hall. However, they did not leave the Tian Yuan clan. Instead, they arrived in a forbidden ground of the Tian Yuan clan. The forbidden ground was protected by layers of formations, enough to block out senses of the soul. "Senior Su, please have a look at where the 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime is near the southern fortress." Jianchen took out a detailed map of the Pingtian Empire and spread it out before Su Ran. Although he could envelope the entire empire with the senses of his soul, and he found many chaotic primes, accurately locating them still required Su Ran's help. Su Ran immediately pointed at the map, marking out where the 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime was. Jianchen remembered the location before stowing the map away. He said sternly, "Senior Su, I'll use the laws of space to teleport there directly. Once we're there, we'll immediately unleash our full strength to kill one of them as quickly as possible. We have to make them pay for their actions. We only have 15 seconds. After those 15 seconds, the 4 other chaotic primes will arrive. Although I can keep the 5 of them suppressed, it's very difficult for me to kill them. If it gets drawn out for too long, the 4 Symbols Alliance can send reinforcements at any time. As a result, we need to kill the person within 15 seconds. However, without the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation, it's almost impossible for me to kill a 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime in such a short amount of time. I'll need you to use the secret technique you used last time," said Su Ran. "No problem," Jianchen agreed. As long as he could kill a chaotic prime, did using a strand of profound sword chi matter? Chapter 2569, Killing a Chaotic Prime, 1. Senior Su, let's go, Jianchen called out. His eyes shone brightly. At that moment, he unleashed the limits of his laws of space. Jianchen had made up his mind about killing the chaotic prime, so he definitely could not create any pulse in space when he teleported over with the laws of space, nor could he allow the chaotic prime to notice them. As a result, he needed to devote even more effort towards using the laws of space. In the next moment, Jianchen and Su Ran suddenly vanished. They vanished extremely suddenly, without any signs at all. There was not even a pulse in space. The majestic wall of the fortress on the southern boundary of the Pingtian Empire had been completely destroyed. The various formations cast down on the walls had all been ruined as well. There were no signs of battle on the fortress walls because the fortress had been destroyed in a single strike by a chaotic prime with his overwhelming strength. The corpses of soldiers were strewn about the fortress. There were hundreds of thousands of them. Many of them were missing limbs and covered with vicious wounds. Clearly, they had been slain in an open battle. An army was stationed nearby. There were not a lot of them, only numbering several tens of thousands. They were all godhood cultivators. They were an army from the Four Symbols Alliance. At this moment, the army had finished tidying up themselves. They slowly advanced towards the depths of the Pingtian Empire. Great Elder, there's something that I don't understand. Since we're attacking the Pingtian Empire, we can just attack their imperial capital. With the strength of our Four Symbols Alliance, destroying the Pingtian Empire would only take a flick of a finger. Why must we be so slow? 6 figures stood in the ruins of the fortress. They varied in age, but their presences were extremely powerful. They had all reached the primordial realm. One of them stood at the front with the 5 others behind him. The leader was a chaotic prime great elder of the Four Symbols Alliance. His name was Jin Li. The person who asked the question was an infinite prime behind Jin Li. The young Star Lord's presence had not been made public yet, so not a lot of people knew about him. You will understand this all in the future. Don't ask about it now, the great elder, Jin Li, said indifferently. He glanced past the corpses detachedly with his aged eyes. Jin Li did not take the lives of these ordinary soldiers seriously. He only treated them as ants. Even the Tianyuan clan was just a small clan in his eyes. What he truly feared was Ming Dong, who had the backing of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Let's gnaw away at the Pingtian Empire for now. The Tianyuan clan won't be able to exist for much longer, Jin Li said slowly. He already understood that the Four Symbols Alliance would not be able to avoid offending the heavenly palace of Bixing if they wanted to ally themselves with the young Star Lord. However, what put him at ease was that the young Star Lord's background was much more powerful than the Tianyuan clans as it seemed right now. After all, the young Star Lord had a grand exalt on his side, while the heavenly palace of Bixing completely relied on their first majesty. Your Four Symbols Alliance probably doesn't have the ability to destroy my Tianyuan clan. At this moment, a cold snort rang out from behind Jin Li. Basically, the moment the voice sounded out, a great sense of danger overwhelmed Jin Li. Jin Li's expression changed drastically. With a single thought, a set of medium-quality god artifact armor immediately covered him completely. It shone with dazzling light, erupting with powerful energy that formed an almost indestructible barrier around him. At almost the same as Jin Li donned his armor, an old, skinny hand appeared. It possessed devastating power, and when it came in contact with the armor, the protective barrier immediately shattered. The hand continued onwards without slowing down at all. It pierced through the various layers of defense conjured by the armor before landing on it gently. The destructive energy within the hand erupted completely at that moment. Bang! Immediately, there was a thunderous rumble, and Jin Li, a 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime, shot off like a broken kite. A deep handprint appeared on his medium-quality god artifact. It's you? Jin Li immediately paled and coughed up blood. With a single glance, he saw Su Ran, who had attacked him. He was shocked. He knew the Tianyuan clan had a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime, but he had never thought the old woman would possess such shocking strength. Despite the protection of a medium-quality god artifact, she still managed to injure him in a single attack. Su Ran was completely calm. She said nothing at all. She immediately pursued him, unleashing her full strength to launch a barrage of fierce attacks. She knew she only had 15 seconds. Although she possessed an absolute advantage in terms of strength, killing a fourth heavenly layer chaotic prime in just 15 seconds was a great challenge for her. After all, defeating and killing were two completely different concepts. At the same time, 3 of the 5 great elders accompanied the young Star Lord at the Eastern Fortress. They followed him closely, protecting his safety. The 3 of them were the most powerful great elders of the 5. They were all of the 5th heavenly layer, which was the same level as Su Ran. The chaotic prime from the Tian Yuan clan has moved. The 3 chaotic primes beside the young Star Lord sensed Su Ran basically at the moment she struck out. The old woman's a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime, while Jin Li's at the 4th heavenly layer. Although he has only reached the 4th heavenly layer recently, he should be able to keep the old woman busy for a while. Let's still send someone over. After all, there's still a heavenly layer's worth of difference. Jin Li is still not the old woman's opponent. The 3 chaotic primes smiled at ease. They did not take the matter too seriously. After all, their opponent was only a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime, while there was the 3 of them here. They only needed to send a single one of them to reduce the old woman's efforts to nothing, perhaps even repelling her and making her flee desperately. However, in the next moment, their expressions changed. Their eyes narrowed, and they became shocked. They were filled with disbelief. How? Her strength? Oh no, how is that old woman so powerful? She heavily injured Jin Li with a single palm strike, even damaging the medium-quality god artifact. I'll stay here to protect the young Star Lord. The 2 of you go immediately. The old woman's far too powerful. Jin Li is in danger. Also get Bai Yi on the west side to go provide help as well. Chapter 2570, Killing a Chaotic Prime. 2 of the 3 chaotic primes at the Eastern Fortress immediately hurried off to the Southern Fortress. Chaotic primes moved extremely quickly, and they were fast enough to cover a tremendous distance with each step. Even if they wanted to cross an entire plane, it would not take them long. However, the Pingtian Empire was no longer the tiny divine kingdom of the past. After expanding their territory, even them, 5th heavenly layer chaotic primes, needed a few seconds to go from the Eastern Fortress to the Southern one. Jin Li, stay alive. The chaotic prime from the Western called out as he hurried over to the Southern Fortress as well. 2 5th heavenly layer chaotic primes and a 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime rushed over as quickly as they could to provide support. At the Southern Fortress, Su Ran's battle against Jin Li had become completely one-sided. Even though their cultivation only differed by a single heavenly layer, Jin Li was unable to fight back at all. 5 seconds had passed since their battle began. Even though this was an extremely short amount of time, every single strike from chaotic primes was devastating. Terrifying storms of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, ripping open space and revealing pitch-black cracks. The ground below either sank from the battle, were reduced to bottomless holes, or became riddled with chasms from the blades of energy. Jin Li constantly coughed up blood. His face was sheet-white, and he had become haggard. The medium-quality god artifact armor on him was riddled with deep handprints. The powerful god artifact had warped in shape and cracks had even appeared. The god artifact was damaged. Its defenses were no longer as great as when it was in perfect condition. By the 9th second, an even more vicious energy suddenly erupted, filled with killing intent. Su Ran had brought her hands together, separating them before pressing them together again. She created a dazzling strand of sword chi. As soon as the sword chi appeared, space distorted, and the surroundings shook. Countless tiny spatial cracks filled the surroundings of the sword chi. This was clearly a powerful secret technique, something extremely terrifying. The tremendous pressure struck fear deep into Jin Li's heart, causing him to start trembling from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to dodge, but he could no longer do that. Swish! The sword chi shot through the air with devastating power, striking Jin Lin mercilessly. It emitted a thunderous boom. Immediately, the god artifact armor on Jean Li finally gave in to the damage and shattered. It was reduced to a sky full of fragments, shooting out in all directions. Su Ran's sword chi did not run out of power after destroying Jean Li's armor. It became extremely dim, continuing onwards and passing through Jean Li's abdomen. It left behind a fist-sized hole. Jean Li was knocked away like a broken kite. He struggled to stabilize himself. However, he was decisive. He directly punched the space behind him, collapsing it in an attempt to flee into a spatial crack. Su Ran had already been prepared for his flight. With a flash, she arrived at the entrance to the spatial crack even faster than Jean Li, sending him flying with a palm strike. Jean Li glanced at Su Ran in complete fear. She was just too powerful, possessing battle prowess far beyond her current level of cultivation. He knew that he had to leave, or he would probably suffer. He could not last very long before a prodigy like her. With a flip of his hand, Jean Li took out a talisman from his space ring as quickly as he could. It was a cosmic movement talisman, an extremely precious treasure. Even with his strength and status, he had only obtained it through luck. It was something that could save his life when he faced a critical moment. However, just when Jean Li wanted to activate the Cosmos movement talisman, an extremely powerful strand of sword chi suddenly appeared. It was only the size of a finger, but it shone with light that could make the world pale. It shot into Jean Li's head with lightning speed. Jean Li immediately grunted as his bloody body suddenly stiffened. The strand of sword chi directly attacked his soul such that he was unable to defend against it. It made him dizzy, so he failed to activate the cosmic movement talisman in his hand immediately. That moment determined his fate. Su Ran arrived silently and struck him with a palm strike. The terrifying energy within it directly reduced Jean Li to dust. Jean Li's soul dispersed immediately. Jean Li! At the same time, a sorrowful and furious roar rang out from the horizon. The two fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes had already arrived, faster than what they had estimated. They had used just 12 seconds to hurry over from the eastern fortress. Unfortunately, they were still late. They could only watch as Jean Li died before them. Ah! The two fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes bellowed out. Without saying anything else, they both struck out, attacking Su Ran furiously. With just the two of you, it's futile. Su Ran was cold. She did not take the two of them seriously at all. She erupted with a terrifying pressure and engaged in a great battle against them. She fought against two experts of the same level of cultivation as her simultaneously, but she managed to overwhelm them from the very first clash. They were not Su Ran's opponent even when they worked together. Avenge Brother Jean. Very soon, Bai Yi hurried over from the western fortress as well. His eyes were bloodshot, and he entered the battle as well. However, the entry of a fourth heavenly layer chaotic prime was still not enough to change the situation. Su Ran completely overwhelmed the three of them. At the same time, she brought her hands together and used a secret technique again. She sent out a powerful strand of sword chi, heavily injuring the fourth heavenly layer chaotic prime, Bai Yi, with a single strike. The expressions of the three great elders all changed when they witnessed that. They all shivered. Su Ran was far more powerful than they had imagined her to be. Even when the three of them worked together, they did not gain any advantage. Young Star Lord, the situation at the southern fortress is urgent. I need to reinforce them immediately, so please enter my divine hall. Apologies. The last chaotic prime at the eastern fortress stowed the young Star Lord into his divine hall before rushing off to the south as well. Very soon, the four of them gathered together. They now had 3 fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes and a 4th heavenly layer chaotic prime. They faced Su Ran together, fighting a devastating battle in the southern fortress of the Pingtian Empire. However, even when the four of them worked together, they were still only able to protect themselves. Su Ran overwhelmed them even though she was one against the four of them. God damn it, where did this old woman come from? How is she so powerful? What kind of impressive legacy did this old woman obtain? She's so terrifying. Even when the four of us work together, we can't match her. The four great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance communicated with one another secretly. They were all shocked, and the shock they felt increased as they fought. In the end, they were shivering in fear. The white-robed, sage-like Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stood atop the Heavens Link Peak in the central region of the Cloud Plain. He stared deeply in the direction of the southern region. What is happening in the southern region? Why are there such powerful pulses of energy? Even the formation that can block senses of the soul has been activated. What's the Four Symbols Alliance doing? The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak murmured softly as he peered into the heavenly secrets. A while later, he suddenly frowned. He immediately became extremely stern. What's happening in the southern region actually relates to the fate of our righteous alliance. Immediately send people to infiltrate the southern region. Afterwards, the Peak Lord suddenly vanished. He also sent messages to the other people in charge of the righteous alliance, calling for an emergency meeting. Chapter 2571, The Tian Yuan Clan's Counterattack. 1. All the scouts of the Righteous Alliance set off with the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's personal order, infiltrating the southern region through various means. Although the Four Symbols Alliance had basically sealed up the entire southern region to prevent the entry of the Righteous Alliance, they were unable to achieve airtight security. Most of the scouts were able to enter through various regions and methods. Even the scouts that had infiltrated the southern region already became active again. Most of them investigated the most recent news in the southern region, relaying it all to the Righteous Alliance. At the same time, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak gathered together with the other decision-makers of the Righteous Alliance within a divine hall. Many of them were stern. We can't peer into anything. The heavenly secrets have fallen into disorder. Someone is hiding what is happening in the southern region on purpose. Some of the decision-makers shook their heads. All of them tried peering and understanding something. Unfortunately, none of them found anything aside from the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak. It's gentle breeze. Within the Four Symbols Alliance, he's the most skilled at peering into things. And I can sense his presence. He's purposefully obscuring it, said the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Even with his ability, he was only able to see a sliver of what was happening under the Breeze Cloud Ancestors cover. At this moment, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's expression changed. A smear of surprise appeared in his eyes. I've just received the news that a mysterious organization has declared war against the Tian Yuan clan. This organization's banner is 9 stars. With that, the Lord of Heaven's Link Peak paused. He glanced past the people seated there and continued. Surprisingly, basically everyone in the organization comes from the Four Symbols Alliance. With that, the people present frowned. Both the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance knew who was backing up the Tian Yuan clan. It was the heavenly palace of Bishing that stood at the peak of the Saints' world. Now that the Four Symbols Alliance had declared war against the Tian Yuan clan despite the risk of offending the heavenly palace of Bishing, they all understood that this matter was probably far more complicated than it seemed. I suspect that the Four Symbols Alliance probably has something that they can rely on, which is why they don't fear the heavenly palace of Bishing. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak voiced his guess. If that's true, our Righteous Alliance will be in danger. Look into it. Look into it with everything that we have. We have to get to the bottom of what's happening in the southern region. The 5 chaotic primes engaged in an extremely intense battle in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. Su Ran possessed an absolute advantage against them, forcing the 4 great elders into retreat. They gradually departed from the Pingtian Empire. The 4 great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance were troubled. Su Ran was just too powerful. They knew that if they kept fighting, they would be defeated sooner or later. Senior Su, allow me to help you kill one of them. Jian Chun chased over from behind. He slashed open the surging ripples of energy and said to Su Ran. He still had 3 strands of profound sword chi remaining. He was ready to use a second or even a third strand at any time now. The actions of the Four Symbols Alliance had completely infuriated him. If it were possible, he was tempted to kill all 4 chaotic primes then and there. The 4 great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance all heard Jian Chen's secret message. they turned green. They had all witnessed how Jean Li had died with the senses of their souls. Originally, Jean Li would have been able to last until they arrived with his strength, but in the end, he died to Su Ran's hands because of a strand of sword qi from Jian Chen. As a result, all of them felt fear towards Jian Chen's profound sword qi. They obviously would not be like this if it were some other time. It was just that they were locked in combat with a powerful enemy right now. Any negligence could claim their lives. The senses of the souls from those from the Four Symbols Alliance have arrived. We can't kill them, Su Ran responded rather powerlessly. Return. At the same time, the gentle breeze ancestor's voice rang out in the heads of the four great elders. The four great elders looked at one another before making up their minds and pulling out together. They traveled away like they were running away, vanishing into the horizon in an instant. Su Ran did not pursue them. She stared in their direction sternly. Jian Chen snorted coldly. He held the 9-star sword of heavenly ways and suddenly vanished. He returned to the ruins of the southern fortress with the laws of space. There were still a few soldiers who had been scattered by the shockwaves, as well as some infinite primes in horrible shape. They were all members of the Four Symbols Alliance. Jian Chen surged with killing intent. Like a god of slaughter, he charged into the crowd with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways and started a massacre. Sword qi shone brightly as he killed an infinite prime with a single strike. Immediately, the armies of the Four Symbols Alliance began to flee crazily. Even in the beginning, there were only several tens of thousands of them at the southern fortress. They lost a few people to the shockwaves of energy from the battle between the chaotic primes, but most of them still remained. They scattered and fled for their lives. You killed millions of soldiers, so how can you just escape? Jian Chen snorted coldly. His gaze was extremely frigid. With a single thought, the will of the ultimate way of the sword appeared, enveloping a region of 100,000 kilometers in an instant. At that moment, he seemed to have become the ruler of that range. His will replaced the laws of the world, and he only needed a thought to destroy everything. Spurt! 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 Immediately, there were a series of explosions, and all the soldiers at godhood within the range exploded. They were reduced to a bloody mist, dyeing the sky red with blood. Only the infinite primes remained fine. With just a thought, Jian Chen killed several tens of thousands of people. It was extremely shocking. What's happening? The infinite primes who remained witnessed this, and all of them paled in fright. They had never seen or heard of something so strange. What powerful sword intent! How is the way of the sword Jian Chen has comprehended so powerful? This isn't the regular way of the sword. The 5 peak experts in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance witnessed this with the senses of their soul, and they all stood up in surprise. The 5 peak experts did not interfere to save them. They had already begun treating lives as nothing since long ago. Losing a few godhood soldiers would not raise their attention at all. Even if a few infinite primes died, it would not be able to shake up their status. Jian Chen extended a finger, and the rain of blood in the sky immediately gathered together, condensing into a huge sword. It gave off a heavy smell of metal, and powerful energy was hidden within. Jian Chen suddenly looked at one of the fleeing infinite primes and pointed at him. Swish! The blood-red sword immediately shot out. With the support of Jian Chen's ultimate way of the sword, it pierced through space with a resplendent glow, cutting the infinite prime in half and claiming his life. By now, the 3 remaining infinite primes had completely vanished. It was no longer possible to find them with the naked eye. Jian Chen's killing intent did not decrease at all. He silently vanished. When he appeared again, he was several million kilometers away. He happened to be in the way of an infinite prime. His laws of space had already reached the primordial realm. Was there anything faster than the laws of space for traveling? Chapter 2572, The Tian Yuan Clan's Counterattack. 2. Although his teleportation range was limited, it was enough to cover the entire Ping Tian Empire. As soon as the fleeing infinite primes saw Jian Chen suddenly appear, his face changed. However, before he could respond, Jian Chen swung his 9-star sword of heavenly ways and killed him on the spot. After that, he stowed the corpse away. Afterwards, Jian Chen repeated this process. He used the laws of space again and again, killing the infinite primes from the southern fortress in just a few seconds. He did not stop at that. He returned to the Tianyuan clan with the laws of space. Greetings, Patriarch. The armies had already gathered together in the Tianyuan clan. Several tens of thousands of cultivators stood in an orderly manner in the center of a square. All the primordial realm protectors were present as well. Even the sword god army that the Tianyuan clan nurtured carefully was present. This was the entire force of the Tianyuan clan. When Jian Chen left, he had already ordered all the high-ranking members to gather everyone. When he returned, the entire Tianyuan clan was prepared. Jian Chen hovered in the sky, and with a wave of his hand, a blue divine hall appeared out of nowhere. He had obtained this divine hall from the Gloomwater sect. It was the Water Cloud Hall. Everyone, enter the divine hall immediately. Jian Chen called out coldly. At the same time, the doors to the divine hall swung open. Immediately, all the people gathered below rose up and vanished into the Water Cloud Hall like a flood. They moved extremely quickly. In just a few seconds, the several tens of thousands of cultivators had all entered the Water Cloud Hall. The divine hall shrank to the size of a fist at that moment as well. Jian Chen grabbed the Water Cloud Hall and suddenly vanished. He had departed from the Dong'an province using the laws of space. A group of armored soldiers currently carried a banner with 9 stars as they retreated towards the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance from the western fortress of the Pingtian Empire. There were not a lot of them, only several tens of thousands. However, most of them were elites. Under the lead of a few infinite primes, they flew through the air in a spectacular manner. They did not retreat quickly. In particular, the infinite primes at the front even conversed with one another secretly. Aren't we going to attack the Pingtian Empire? We just started fighting, so why did the Great Elders order us to retreat? The Tianyuan clan still has a chaotic prime. Before the chaotic prime is killed, it'll be very difficult to take down the Pingtian Empire. The Great Elders probably want us to retreat so that we can avoid the shockwaves from the battle between chaotic primes. They don't want us to get dragged in needlessly. I wonder what the situation with the southern fortress is like. The energy storm there is just too powerful, so we can't approach it at all with the senses of our souls. We can't check the situation there at all. Don't worry. We have 5 great elders with us. We possess an absolute advantage. The chaotic prime of the Tianyuan clan is dead for sure. Right now, we need to lead our soldiers far away to avoid the storm of energy from the battle between chaotic primes. Even we have to maintain our distance from a battle between such experts, let alone these godhood cultivators. The infinite primes were in no hurry. They had only received an order for retreat and had no clue how the battle between the chaotic primes was going. They did not know that out of the 5 great elders that they depended on the most, one of them was already dead, and the rest had fled. At this moment, the space before them suddenly twisted. The power of space surged, and Jian Chen silently appeared, blocking their paths. The infinite primes were surprised as they stared at Jian Chen, who had suddenly appeared. However, as they were stunned, a huge divine hall appeared. The doors swung open, and the cultivators of the Tianyuan clan surged out like a flood. At the front were the infinite prime protectors of the Tianyuan clan. Protector Shui and Protector Qi, the 2 late infinite primes, happened to be among them as well. Kill them all. Leave none alive. Jian Chen ordered coldly. His eyes were frigid, and they held no sympathy. The soldiers stationed at the western fortress of the Pingtian Empire had all died to their hands. As a result, he would not show any mercy to the godhood soldiers or the infinite primes. Immediately, an intense battle erupted. Rumbles from the collision of energy constantly rang out, filling the surroundings with violent shockwaves. Jian Chen did not take part in the battle here. He left behind half of the soldiers and 8 infinite primes before leaving with the Water Cloud Hall. There were no particularly powerful experts among the people who attacked the western fortress. There were only 6 infinite primes, and the strongest was only at the 5th heavenly layer. Most of them were early infinite primes. There were 2 7th heavenly layer infinite primes out of the 8 that the Tianyuan clan had brought. That was enough to completely crush them and even have an infinite prime or 2 spare to fight against the godhood soldiers. As a result, the Tianyuan clan possessed the complete upper hand against the enemies near the western fortress. Jianchen carried the other people from the Tianyuan clan in the Watercloud Hall, crossing through the entire Pingtian Empire with the laws of space. He blocked the paths of the final army from the Four Symbols Alliance in the east. He had the laws of space. Even though his comprehension of laws of space remained at early infinite prime, he was no longer any slower than most chaotic primes. As a matter of fact, he even surpassed some of them in speed. As a result, the people of the Four Symbols Alliance were unable to avoid his pursuit. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, the middle-aged man at the very front of the army that had attacked the eastern fortress, suddenly saw Jianchen appear. He could not help but cry out. For some reason, he abruptly felt an ill omen. The middle-aged man was a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime, the strongest out of all the infinite primes assigned to the young Star Lord. He had already realized that the battle between the chaotic primes in the southern fortress had ended with the senses of his soul. However, due to the violent storm of energy, he was unable to approach the region with the senses of the soul, so he had no idea about the outcome. Now that he saw Jianchen had come alone to stop them, his heart sank. Basically at the same time, he expanded the senses of his soul and enveloped the 3 other fortresses of the Pingtian Empire. In the next moment, his face changed drastically. Before, he had always been concentrating on where the chaotic primes fought, so he had not been paying attention to the situation of the western and southern fortresses. Now that he checked on them, he immediately paled in fright. All the soldiers from the southern fortress are dead. The middle-aged man was stunned. He was in a state of disbelief. However, in the next moment, he suddenly thought of something and immediately fled into the distance. Run. Everyone run. Scatter and run. The middle-aged man called out. Even though he was a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime, he had no interest in fighting. The army that attacked the southern fortress was all dead, while the army that attacked the western fortress was facing a bitter battle right now. The 5 great elders had completely vanished after ordering a retreat. He knew what all this meant. Chapter 2573, The Tianyuan Clan's Counterattack. 3. The middle-aged man's actions stunned the infinite primes behind him. They were rather confused. Afterwards, they expanded the senses of their souls into the surroundings as well. Immediately, they witnessed the situation of the southern and western fortresses. They were all shocked. Impossible! The infinite primes who had attacked the eastern fortress were all shocked. Without any hesitation, they scattered and fled as quickly as they could. This army from the Four Symbols Alliance began to flee desperately before the battle even begun. Kill them all. Leave none alive. Jianchen coldly ordered. The remaining half of all the cultivators from the Tianyuan clan surged out from the Watercloud Hall, hunting down the cultivators from the Four Symbols Alliance in the surroundings. Heya joined in as well. Under Jianchen's orders, he did not go looking for primordial realm experts. Instead, he was responsible for god kings. The army that had attacked the eastern fortress had more god kings than the Tianyuan clan, so Jianchen used Heya to make up for this difference. He planned on killing the infinite primes personally. Although he possessed the ultimate way of the sword and could replace the world with his will, killing everything within the range of 100,000 kilometers, he did not use it against these godhood cultivators of the Four Symbols Alliance. He planned on using this as an opportunity to properly train the cultivators of the Tianyuan clan. The Watercloud Hall continued to hover above the battlefield, but Jianchen had already vanished. He traveled 10 million kilometers away with the laws of space, stopping the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime who had fled first. His 9-star sword of heavenly ways shone with resplendent light as 9 illusionary stars appeared. Shining with starlight, he engaged in an intense battle against the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. Jian Chen's presence surged as sword qi rampaged through the surroundings. He used his full strength, and every single strand of sword qi was blinding. He was locked in an intense fight against the infinite prime. At the same time, he expanded the will of his ultimate way of the sword, enveloping a range of 100,000 kilometers. The other infinite primes were all within this range. Even though they moved very quickly, it had only been a few seconds since they started fleeing. However, at this moment, the expressions of the fleeing infinite primes all changed. In the next moment, they saw the space around them tremble, and a wall of invisible sword qi silently appeared, engulfing them with cold, killing intent. The infinite primes all tried to defend, but since it had happened all of a sudden, a few strands of sword qi broke through their defenses and left behind various wounds on them. Who is it? Who launched a sneak attack against us? The infinite primes all became cautious. Even though the sword qi around them was not powerful, it was silent, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. They dared not be careless. However, no matter how they searched, they were unable to find where the attacks came from. Suddenly, their faces changed. At that moment, they felt their surrounding space seemingly turn into a world of sword qi. The origin energy, vegetation, and pebbles littered across the ground actually erupted with sword qi. They flew in from everywhere towards them. At that moment, they even had the impression that everything in the world had become sharp swords. Where they stood had become a domain where only sword qi existed. Endless sword qi, whether in the form of anything or from nothing, bombarded them from all directions. The infinite primes of the Four Symbols Alliance were powerless. They used their various methods to deal with the barrage of attacks from all directions as they continued to flee into the distance. Fortunately, the sword qi did not pose much of a threat to the infinite primes. It was very difficult to harm their lives while they utilized their full defense. However, it was still interference. It made them slow down dramatically. To another side, Jian Chen frowned more and more as he fought the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. His opponent was extraordinary, having reached the peak of the ninth heavenly layer. Although Jian Chen could achieve victory with his current strength coupled with the laws of space, it was very difficult for him to end the battle quickly. If this fight dragged out for too long, he might not be able to kill the other fleeing infinite primes. I can only do this if I want to end the battle quickly. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He immediately made up his mind, and a strand of profound sword qi appeared. It shone with illuminating light and stabbed into his opponent's forehead instantly. Arg! Immediately, piercing pain appeared in the infinite prime's soul, and he could not help but wail out. He clutched his head as blood flowed from all his facial openings. He directly fell from the sky. If Jian Chen's profound sword qi was used against a fourth heavenly layer chaotic prime, it could probably only stun them temporarily. However, against infinite primes, even those at the ninth heavenly layer, it could deal life-threatening damage. Swish! With a flash, Jian Chen's 9-star sword of heavenly ways directly plunged into the middle-aged man's forehead, killing him off immediately. He did not stop after that. He stowed the corpse away with a wave of his hand before leaving with the laws of space. In just a split second, Jian Chen crossed several tens of thousand kilometers. He stopped a second infinite prime in his tracks and struck out with lightning speed. At the same time, the Gentle Breeze ancestor, Cheng Hu, Gong Ji, Changfeng Yun, and Wu Lu gathered together in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. They all frowned. Shizhan is already dead. He's a peak 9th heavenly layer infinite prime, only a step away from becoming a chaotic prime. If he had time, he would definitely be able to break through within a century. What a pity, said Zheng Hu with a sigh of pity. A few infinite primes still remain. With the strength that Jian Chen has displayed and his ability to pursue with the laws of space, none of these infinite primes will be able to escape. Gentle Breeze, do we interfere? Gong Ji asked. The Gentle Breeze ancestor shook his head and sighed gently. We definitely cannot. Right now, their battle is only happening because of the young Star Lord's grievances with the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. As the young Star Lord's guards, they all must listen to the young Star Lord. What they do has nothing to do with our Four Symbols Alliance. We need to do our best to rope in the young Star Lord, but we can't afford to offend the heavenly palace of Bishing either. We have to remain uninvolved with the battle between the young Star Lord and the Tian Yuan clan. Chapter 2574. Heavy casualties. The Four Symbols Alliance did not interfere with the battle. They completely detached themselves from it. The so-called guards that the Four Symbols Alliance assigned to the young Star Lord were immediately forced into a retreat without any support. They suffered injuries and casualties. The Infinite Primes who fled from the eastern fortress of the Pingtian Empire were like a joke before Jian Chen's laws of space. They were hunted down one by one, dying to Jian Chen's sword. Although primordial realm experts were very difficult to kill due to their various methods of escape, the difference in strength was just too great. Even with all their various methods of escape, they felt powerless. Not to mention that they were facing more than just Jian Chen, someone who could crush them in battles alone, but they were also facing his laws of space. The battle of the primordial realm near the eastern fortress ended. The battle between the godhood cultivators continued with great intensity. The battle between several tens of thousand godhood cultivators of the Tian Yuan clan and Four Symbols Alliance would not end in a short amount of time. Even though the Tian Yuan clan was the weaker side in terms of godhood cultivators, where they did not have as many god kings as the Four Symbols Alliance, they gained the upper hand thanks to the primordial realm Heya, who constantly slaughtered the god kings. Jian Chen did not interfere with the battle between the godhood experts. He immediately vanished. Two streaks of light shot over a desert 1,000,000 kilometers to the west of the Pingtian Empire. They moved extremely quickly, vanishing in an instant. There were two people within the light. They both gave off the presences of primordial realm experts. Their energy surged as they were wrapped in the power of laws. One of them fled as the other pursued. They traveled further and further away from the Pingtian Empire. The person in pursuit was Protector Shui of the Tian Yuan clan. His white robes were covered with blood. Who knows whether it came from his allies or enemies? The person fleeing was the fifth heavenly layer Infinite Prime from the Four Symbols Alliance. He comprehended the laws of wind, so he possessed speed greater than those at the same cultivation level. As a result, even though he was weaker than Protector Shui was unable to catch up to him if he wanted to flee. The distance between them grew wider and wider. You're called Protector Shui, right? Save your energy. Although you're more powerful than me, you're nowhere close to me in terms of speed. Look, I haven't even used a secret technique, yet you still can't catch up to me. If I used a secret technique, do you believe that you wouldn't be able to see my shadow? Suddenly, the fleeing primordial realm expert sneered complacently. Protector Shui remained silent as he continued his pursuit. His expression was rather ugly. They grew further and further apart. He indeed could not catch up to him. After all, those who comprehended the laws of wind always possessed an advantage in terms of speed. At this moment, Protector Shui's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared ahead in delight and stopped chasing. Why aren't you chasing anymore, Protector Shui? Is it because the fleeing primordial realm expert scoffed, but he stopped suddenly. His face was filled with surprise. Jian Chen appeared before him silently, standing in the air and blocking his path. The laws of space. The fleeing Infinite Prime gulped with some difficulty. He was extremely fast with his laws of wind, much faster than people at the same level of cultivation as him. However, he was not faster than those with the laws of space. Jian Chen struck out. He gripped the 9-star sword of heavenly ways and swung down mercilessly. With just a single strike, he cut through all the defenses of the 5th heavenly layer Infinite Prime, stabbing into his head and killing him. Patriarch. Protector Shui arrived before Jian Chen. He clasped his fist in respect. Return and provide support to the other protectors. Jian Chen nodded. He stowed the primordial realm expert's corpse away and then his sword. Afterwards, he grabbed Protector Shui by the shoulder, and they vanished. The next moment, Jian Chen took Protector Shui back to the battlefield set near the western fortress. The Four Symbols Alliance had completely lost the upper hand there. They were forced into a constant retreat. Only 3 infinite primes remained. They were all early or mid-infinite primes. There was not a single late infinite prime among them. Currently, they were making their final desperate struggles in the encirclement led by Protector Chi and the 6 other protectors of the Tianyuan clan. Swish. Protector Shui set off. As soon as he returned, he immediately entered the battle. Now that a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime had joined the fight, the 3 primordial realm experts of the 4 Symbols Alliance who were making their final struggle became even more powerless. They were slain very soon, and the corpses naturally ended up in Jian Chen's hands. Very soon, the battle ended. This time, all the godhood experts and infinite primes who attacked the Pingtian Empire were slain. Not a single one was left alive. The young Star Lord's campaign against the Pingtian Empire ended in complete failure. After the battle ended, Jian Chen left behind a few people to clean up the battlefield and deal with the aftermath. He himself returned to the Dong'an province with several tens of thousands of cultivators of the Tianyuan clan. Patriarch, we've completed the head count. This time, a total of around 68,000 cultivators from the Tianyuan clan took part in the battle. Less than 40,000 returned alive. We've lost close to 30,000 people in this battle. Shiyu held a battle report and explained to Jian Chen in the full discussion hall of the Tianyuan clan. The atmosphere was rather heavy. The upper echelon in the discussion hall became pained when they heard the number. The Tianyuan clan had lost close to 30,000 people, which was nothing compared to the millions that the Pingtian Empire had lost. However, these cultivators were all handpicked. They were elites and could not be compared to regular soldiers. Jian Chen just sat on the throne. He did not show any pain or sorrow when he heard the number. He said, "For a clan to thrive, it needs to be baptized with many difficult tests and wars. The battle today is only the first step. We will go through many more in the future." Jian Chen understood that the Tianyuan clan was nowhere close to being the 4 Symbols Alliance's opponent in terms of strength. If he had not killed off over half of the primordial realm experts with lightning speed, as well as all the cultivators from the southern fortress to decrease the difference, the Tianyuan clan would definitely suffer defeat. The Patriarch is right. There is no organization or clan that does not develop through various tests of life and death across the entire cloud plane. I completely agree with the Patriarch. Protector Chi stood up and clasped his hands at Jian Chen. After that, he hesitated a little. However, in the end he still said, "There's just something that has raised my doubts." Although the infinite primes we faced this time carried a very unfamiliar flag, I do know their identities a little, as I've met with them several times in the past. They're all members of the 4 Symbols Alliance. May I ask why the people of the 4 Symbols Alliance have turned against us? What? They're from the 4 Symbols Alliance? Impossible. Hasn't the 4 Symbols Alliance always been very friendly with the Tianyuan clan? Why have they suddenly attacked us? After hearing Protector Chi's words, many people were surprised in the discussion hall. The entire place descended into a ruckus at that moment. Even Shiyu's complexion became extremely ugly. Chapter 2575. Unique Constitutions. The Tianyuan clan held a nervous and stern meeting about the battle this time. As all of that happened, the young Star Lord unleashed his wrath in the luxurious residence that the 4 Symbols Alliance had specially prepared for him in the distant headquarters of the 4 Symbols Alliance. Trash. Useless trash. You're all useless trash. There were 3 5th heavenly layer chaotic primes and 2 4th heavenly layer chaotic primes, 5 chaotic primes in total, and you couldn't even deal with an old woman. I would give it to you if her cultivation was far beyond yours, but she was only a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime as well. There were so many of you, yet you couldn't even defeat an opponent at the same level of cultivation as you. This is the first time I've seen trash as useless as you. A clamor rang out in the residence. The young Star Lord was furious, smashing the decor in the place one after another. He swore at the 4 great elders standing there, utterly cursing the 4 authoritative great elders of the 4 Symbols Alliance. The 4 great elders said nothing. They chose to remain silent as they faced the furious young Star Lord. However, it was possible to tell from their sunken faces that they were not as peaceful inside as they seemed. As a matter of fact, a sliver of disgust and fury would flash through their eyes. This was what they felt towards the young Star Lord. The four of them were precious existences in the Four Symbols Alliance. They were only below the five ancestors. Even the five ancestors would not treat them like this, so they felt extremely furious now that the young Star Lord insulted them like this. Of course, they dared not show this fury. After all this cursing, the young Star Lord began to feel that it was pointless, so he gradually calmed down. He stood with his hands behind his back. He was arrogant and cold as he asked, "Who else do we have? Aside from the four of us, the others have all fallen in battle. Even Jean Li died to Su Ran's hands," a great elder said after a moment of silence. "What? They've all fallen in battle?" The young Star Lord's face changed. His handsome face darkened in anger. He had been insulted by the Tian Yuan clan at first. Afterwards, he gained reinforcements from the Four Symbols Alliance and led a group of experts to attack the Pingtian Empire in an aggressive manner. Originally, he wanted to make his way into the territory of the Pingtian Empire bit by bit with overwhelming strength, slowly approaching the Tian Yuan clan such that their patriarch, Jian Qin, could only watch them lose their territory while being unable to do anything. He wanted Jian Qin to regret what he did in the past. However, he had never thought that the group of experts he had led with lofty aspirations would be completely destroyed in the end. The young Star Lord immediately felt like his face was burning. He felt utterly ashamed. This was just too humiliating to his great pride and extraordinary identity. The Tian Yuan clan. The Tian Yuan clan. The young Star Lord was now utterly pale from fury. His anger and killing intent towards Jian Qin could no longer increase anymore. This was the first time he had been humiliated since birth. He could not endure it. Afterwards, the young Star Lord went to find the five ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance, directly demanding them to destroy the Tian Yuan clan. He could no longer endure the thought of having the Tian Yuan clan exist on the cloud plane for another day. At the same time, he thought about how Jian Qin, who had tossed him out of the clan before, was probably scoffing and sneering away at him. The five ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance furrowed their brows after receiving the young Star Lord's request. They felt rather pained. The conflict between the young Star Lord and the Tian Yuan clan was a matter that was extremely difficult to deal with. They needed to be careful with every step that they took, as even the slightest of negligence could cost the entire Four Symbols Alliance. At this moment, a middle-aged Infinite Prime walked in. He said politely, "Ancestors, we've discovered that a large number of scouts from the Righteous Alliance have infiltrated our southern region." Has the Righteous Alliance finally come? The Gentle Breeze ancestor let out a long sigh. He said, "The Righteous Alliance is currently being led by the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The Peak Lord once took great care of the Tian Yuan clan, so we can be certain that if we take action, the Righteous Alliance definitely will not just stand by." That's right, we can't do anything. Otherwise, it's extremely likely that the consequences will become unmanageable. "We're still not the Righteous Alliance's opponent," said Zheng Hu. The five of them chimed in on one another, purposefully making the matter seem very severe. They were unwilling to personally deal with the Tian Yuan clan. Then how should we deal with the Tian Yuan clan? The young Star Lord's expression was extremely ugly. "We can't rush this matter. We need to come up with a long-term plan," said the Gentle Breeze ancestor, delaying the whole matter altogether. The young Star Lord returned to his residence with a sunken face. None of the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance were willing to take action, so there was nothing he could do to the Tian Yuan clan. After all, he had only brought a ninth heavenly layer Infinite Prime with him this time. That was not enough to deal with the Tian Yuan clan. "Mu Lin, do you have any method of contacting the Star Brilliance plane so that they can send some people over?" asked the young Star Lord. "Young Master, Master gave strict orders that this trip to the Cloud Plane is only training for the young Master. If we call for experts of the Star Brilliance plane, that will probably break the rules of the training. The consequences will be severe if we anger Master," Mu Lin said carefully. He knew that the young Star Lord was very lustful, so he had purposely gotten the Four Symbols Alliance to send some women over. They were all dressed beautifully to serve the young Star Lord and ease his anger. Who are these people? Get out of here, all of you, you ordinary women. The young Star Lord was already angered, so he was in no mood to admire them. Moreover, he had seen great beauties already. Regular women could no longer interest him, so he chased them all out. If the young master likes women, I do have two people in mind. At this moment, a voice rang out in the head of Mu Lin. It came from one of the great elders responsible for the young Star Lord's safety. Who are they? Mu Lin immediately asked. The two princesses of the Xiandao Empire in the northern region. Not only are they absolutely alluring, but they possess the heavenly Yin body and the innate body of ways as well. The heavenly Yin body and the innate body of ways? That's rather rare constitutions in the saints' world. In particular, the heavenly Yin body can lead to unimaginable benefits once someone joins with them. The young master will definitely like them. Mu Lin's eyes immediately lit up and asked for their exact location. Chapter 2576, Tong Tian's visit. Afterwards, Mu Lin directly made his way to the northern region of the Cloud Plain. The four great elders gathered together after he left. They stared in the direction that Mu Lin had traveled off into as they discussed among themselves secretly. The northern region is the Righteous Alliance's territory. Now that the young Star Lord's bodyguard has gone there like that, do you think there will be conflict with the Righteous Alliance? Conflict will be good. Isn't that what our Four Symbols Alliance wants? However, since he is the bodyguard of the young Star Lord, the Righteous Alliance probably won't dare to do anything to him. Whatever. All we need to do is plant a seed of grievance in the Righteous Alliance and let it sprout slowly. I heard the Xiandao Empire's two princesses are engaged to two peak clans in the central region. Under the lead of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, the ancestors of the Righteous Alliance gathered together for a secret discussion. Now, we're basically certain that the foster son of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, the young Star Lord, has come to the Cloud Plain, and the Four Symbols Alliance basically wants to ally themselves with him, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak said sternly. The Four Symbols Alliance had not made the young Star Lord's presence public, and extremely few people knew about the matter. However, the Righteous Alliance was just too developed. They had people who had infiltrated the upper echelon of the Four Symbols Alliance, so they received the most recent news very soon. That's bad. Even if the young Star Lord has only come to the Cloud Plain for training, and he has brought next to no experts with him, his identity is still there. The Four Symbols Alliance clearly wants to use him against us. The ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou, stroked his long beard and let out a long sigh. The ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming, the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian, and Lian Wuji from the Fire God clan frowned as well. If the Four Symbols Alliance allied themselves with the young Star Lord, it would be a great calamity for their Righteous Alliance. Although the young Star Lord did not possess particularly great power as an individual, his special and exalted status gave him great power. If he wanted to assist the Four Symbols Alliance, it would not be something that their Righteous Alliance could handle. We only have one path ahead of us now that everything is like this, and that's the Tianyuan clan. The ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming, seemed extremely old. His face was riddled with wrinkles as he squinted his eyes. His gaze was deep. The heavenly palace of Bixing is behind the Tianyuan clan, and their First Majesty is a supreme expert who has stunned the saints' world by hunting down the heaven-splitting ancestor. They can indeed face the organization behind the young Star Lord. However, the Tianyuan clan has always been unwilling to have anything to do with us and the Four Symbols Alliance. I think it will be rather difficult for us to ally with the Tianyuan clan, said the ancestor of the Fire God clan, Lian Wuji, in thought. He wore fire-red robes as his long, scarlet hair danced about like a ball of flames. Times have changed. Ming Dong is no longer present, and the divine general from the divine palace of Bixing has left as well. The Tianyuan clan no longer possesses as great a deterrence towards the Four Symbols Alliance as in the past. I believe the Tianyuan clan needs us, said the ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Jidao. I have a great-grandson who just happens to have some ties with Jianqin. Why don't I let this great-grandson of mine pay a visit to the Tianyuan clan and see what Jianqin thinks? Tong Wuming said. That would be perfect. The news of the war that the Pingtian Empire experienced spread across all 5 regions of the Cloud Plain in just a day. It caused quite the disturbance. At the same time, the mysterious organization that had a 9-starred banner became the center of attention of all organizations on the Cloud Plain as well. Conversations and discussions about this mysterious organization could basically be heard everywhere. Only a handful of peak organizations knew exactly what the mysterious organization was. Until they distributed the news, the organizations of lower status would naturally have no idea. I wonder where these people who provoked the Tianyuan clan came from. Don't they know that even the 2 great alliances on the Cloud Plain do not dare to provoke the Tianyuan clan? There definitely won't be a good outcome for them since they have provoked the Tianyuan clan. Let's just wait and see. This organization with 9 stars will definitely be in for trouble. The most recent news is that the Tianyuan clan killed one of the 5 chaotic primes from the organization on the spot. What? Even an expert like a chaotic prime died? Heavens! Now that I think about our mountain range sect, our most powerful ancestor is only an infinite prime. He's nowhere close to being a chaotic prime. The Tianyuan clan really is powerful. Just as these people discussed about the Tianyuan clan and the mysterious organization enthusiastically, a special guest arrived in the Dong'an province of the Pingtian Empire. He was a handsome young man with a striking appearance. He wore luxurious, white robes as he held a folding fan. He bore an impudent smile on his face as he strolled through the busy streets, constantly letting out sighs of amazement. This young man was the young master who had once saved Jianqin back in the dwelling of God King Duanmu, Tong Tian. A middle-aged man in robes followed Tong Tian closely. Even though he was only a God King, his presence was much more powerful than most late God Kings. This middle-aged man was Tong Tian's personal bodyguard, Qin Zheng. When I think of the past, Brother Jianqin had still been risking his life to fight for the resources left behind by a God King, but now his status has become so great. The clan he founded has single-handedly become renowned across the entire Cloud Plain, a target for our ancestor to ally with. Then you look at me. I haven't changed much at all compared to when I first met Jianqin. Uncle Qin, why do you think that people can be so different? Tong Tian swung his fan. He seemed like a careless fool, as if he had been devastated. No matter how you put it, I am the prodigy with the greatest talent in the past 100,000 years in the Tong family's history. However, once you compare me to Jianqin, the gap is just far too shocking, Tong Tian sighed gently. He was extremely hurt. Young master, if you work hard on cultivation, you might not be able to catch up to the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, but you will be able to surpass many others. It's extremely likely for you to make it onto the God King's throne in the future, said Qin Zheng encouragingly. Tong Tian was unaffected. The God King's throne? So what? It's just an opportunity for those God Kings who like to show off to make a name for themselves. Look at Brother Jianqin. He never attempted the God King's throne, but he killed many Supreme God Kings when he was a God King. It's said that when half of the Supreme God Kings on the God King's throne vanished without a trace, it was directly related to Brother Jianqin as well. Very soon, Tong Tian and Qin Zhang arrived at the Tianyuan clan. They stated their identity and intentions and a guard immediately passed the message on. As soon as Jianqin learnt that Tong Tian had come to visit, he sent people to bring him to where he resided. Jianqin had always felt grateful towards Tong Tian. When he was still weak and faced life-threatening danger in God King Duanmu's dwelling in the past, it was Tong Tian's sudden appearance that saved him in an overwhelming manner. He even gave him a precious God-tier pill, allowing him to heal from his heavy wounds in an extremely short amount of time. As a result, Tong Tian had basically saved Jianqin's life. They would naturally have a conversation when they met. After a simple greeting and some talk, Tong Tian directly approached the main reason for why he had come. He mentioned that the Righteous Alliance wanted to ally themselves with the Tian Yuan clan. Jian Chen had already guessed Tong Tian's intentions, so he was not surprised at all. However, he did not agree. He shook his head gently and said, "Brother Tongdan, I'll be frank. If your Righteous Alliance allies with our Tian Yuan clan, it will probably only be detrimental for you. There won't be any benefits at all." Chapter 2577. The Xiandao Empire's Crisis. There won't be any benefits at all? Brother Jianchen, may I ask why you say that? Tong Tian was confused. Jianchen said after some thought, "If I've guessed correctly, your Righteous Alliance should already know that the Four Symbols Alliance has begun to rope in the young Star Lord. As the only child of the 9 brilliant Star Lord, the young Star Lord holds extremely great power. The ancestors of your Righteous Alliance are worried that the young Star Lord will assist the Four Symbols Alliance against you, so they thought of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing in hopes of using the Heavenly Palace of Bishing against the young Star Lord when the day comes. That's a good idea, except you overestimate me far too much. I cannot make the Heavenly Palace of Bishing step in with my power alone. All I can do is protect myself. As a result, if your Righteous Alliance gets involved, it's not necessarily a good thing for you." Jian Chen directly explained everything. Although he could directly declare war on the Four Symbols Alliance with the support of the Righteous Alliance, or even destroy them in a single stroke, there really was no benefit for the Righteous Alliance in doing so. If the Righteous Alliance did not take part, they would not offend the young Star Lord, and the young Star Lord would not resent the Righteous Alliance. However, once they did take part, they would really be falling out with the young Star Lord. By then, even if the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed, the Righteous Alliance would have to face the retaliation of the young Star Lord. The Righteous Alliance definitely could not deal with the retaliation of the young Star Lord. With Jian Chen's explanation, Tong Tian also understood the connections involved. He could not help but frown. He also came to a certain understanding that perhaps the Tian Yuan clan's relationship with the Heavenly Palace of Bishing was not as sturdy as his ancestor believed it to be. Jian Chen could use his merit from returning the Enata Tower to protect the Tian Yuan clan, but he definitely would not be able to protect the Righteous Alliance. Meanwhile, at the majestic imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire that was enveloped by a powerful formation, only a few gates were left uncovered, allowing officials to move in and out. However, at this moment, a figure flew over with extremely great speed. His energy surged as he made the wind and clouds churn. His tremendous presence enveloped the entire imperial palace. This was an infinite prime. His level of cultivation was so great, having reached the 9th heavenly layer. As soon as he arrived, he alarmed the ancestors of the Xiandao Empire. Tian Shang of the 3 ancestors of the Xiandao Empire opened her eyes in the forbidden grounds of the imperial palace. She stared outside sternly. The person who had come had a presence so tremendous that it had reached the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime. An expert like that could crush the entire Xiandao Empire. He's actually come right to the imperial palace. Who is he? Tian Shuang thought before appearing outside with a flash. The 2 other infinite primes of the Xiandao Empire emerged from seclusion at the same time as well. They planned on going out and receiving him personally. The 3 ancestors of the Xiandao Empire dared not be careless now that a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime had personally come. Boom! However, at this moment, a deafening rumble rang out. The barrier around the imperial palace shook violently. It rapidly dimmed before shattering easily despite being the most powerful formation in the entire empire. As soon as the person approached the imperial palace, they struck out, destroying their protective formation with a single strike. He did not try to talk to them at all. The expressions of Tian Shuang and the 2 other ancestors, who had originally planned on greeting him politely, immediately changed. He had expressed that he had come with ill intentions. "Please stop. May I ask how our Xiandao Empire has offended you and made you so angry? You destroyed the formation of our imperial palace as soon as you arrived." Tian Shuang called out, flying into the sky with the 2 other primordial realm experts of the Xiandao Empire. At this moment, the 3 of them saw the person in question. He was an old man who seemed extremely ordinary, but his presence was so powerful that it was enough to cause the three of them to shiver. A ninth heavenly layer infinite prime was like a mountain to the three ancestors of the Xiandao Empire, who were at the fourth heavenly layer at most. It was suffocating as they faced him. The old man was the young Star Lord's bodyguard, Mu Lin. Mu Lin stood in the sky. He had suffered at the hands of the Tian Yuan clan before and had also returned in defeat during the young Star Lord's attack on the Ping Tian Empire. As a result, he felt extremely aggrieved. Now that he faced Tian Shuang and the others who were weaker than him, he finally seemed to regain his confidence. He used his powerful presence to envelope the three of them and coldly said, "Where are the people in possession of the innate body of ways and the heavenly Yin body? Immediately summon them so that they can return with me and serve the young Star Lord." The expression of the three immediately changed with that. They did not know who the young Star Lord was, but since he could make a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime serve him, his identity was definitely extraordinary. He was not an existence that their Xiandao Empire could provoke. Xing'er and Lan'er are already engaged to the young master of the God's Fallen clan, said Tian Shuang. The God's Fallen clan was a peak clan on the Cloud Plain. Now, she could only mention the God's Fallen clan in hopes of scaring him away. However, she did not know that the young Star Lord mentioned by Mu Lin was far greater than she had imagined him to be. The God's Fallen clan? Even they dare to contend for the heavenly Yin body and the innate body of ways with the young Star Lord? Mu Lin was filled with contempt as he sneered. Afterwards, he spread his hand, and powerful energy immediately gathered over, condensing into a huge hand that reached towards the imperial palace below. He did not take the three ancestors seriously at all. He could not be bothered to waste words on them anymore, so he directly took action. He had already located the two women among the various halls. Stop! Tian Shang and the two other ancestors of the Xiandao Empire were furious. How could they just watch Mu Lin take people away in such a fearless fashion? The three of them immediately interfered. Even you want to try and stop me? You're looking to die. Mu Lin's eyes turned cold. He used one hand against his opponents, forming a hand seal to use a secret technique, which conjured a starlight that enveloped the three of them. He used his other hand to control the hand of energy, demolishing a hall below with a rumble. He grabbed Xing'er and Lan'er who were cultivating. Tian Shuang and the two other old men of the Xiandao Empire were repelled by Mu Ling's secret technique. They became covered with blood, injured. Out of the three of them, the most powerful, Tian Shuang, was only a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime. A huge difference existed between them and Mu Lin, who had reached the ninth heavenly layer. They really are great beauties. The young Star Lord will definitely like them. Mu Lin studied Xing'er and Lan'er and nodded in satisfaction. Afterwards, he looked at Tian Shuang and the others, and killing intent shone in his eyes. Your northern region seems to stand on the side of the righteous alliance. Since that's the case, I can't spare you. With that, Mu Lin struck out once again, planning on killing the three of them. The expressions of the three ancestors of the Xiandao Empire changed drastically. They immediately struck out to receive his attacks that forced them into a battle above the imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire. A battle between primordial realm experts was extremely terrifying. Every time they clashed, the energy shockwaves they erupted with were devastating. Coupled with how they were only a few hundred meters away from the ground, the imperial palace was reduced to ruins in just 2 clashes. Many armored soldiers scurried about for their lives. People were dead and injured. Father! Father! Trapped, Xing'er and Lan'er called out sorrowfully. They watched the emperor in dragon robes get knocked away by the shockwaves of energy, spurting blood along the way before being buried in the ruins. Spurt! Spurt! At the same time, 2 heads flew high into the sky. Blood dyed the sky red. Aside from Tian Shuang, the ancestors of the Xiandao Empire had all been beheaded and slain by Mu Lin. Meanwhile, Tian Shuang was covered in blood. She was heavily injured. Chapter 2578. The God's Fallen clan looking at her headless and dead companions, Tian Shuang was filled with grief. She glanced at Xinger and Lanner, who had been captured by Mu Lin one last time, before gritting her teeth and fleeing into the distance. "None of you can leave today." Mu Lin sneered as he gave off a bloodthirsty killing intent. He had repressed this far too much these days. Now that he finally had an opportunity to vent, he naturally wanted a massacre. Mu Lin immediately transformed into a blur in pursuit. He moved extremely quickly, approaching Tian Shuang in an instant. After all, the difference in strength was just too great. Not only were their battle prowess on completely different levels, but their speeds were as well. How could Tian Shuang escape from Mu Lin as a fourth heavenly layer infinite prime? Tian Shuang's heart suddenly sank. Mu Lin clearly wanted to kill her. But afterwards, determination flooded her eyes. Immediately, faint flames sprang up from her body. At that moment, Tian Shuang burned her essence blood in a frenzy, paying a great price to use a secret technique and immediately travel millions of kilometers away. Mu Lin sneered. He expanded the senses of his soul and easily found Tian Shuang. He shot off like a comet, pursuing with lightning speed. Several million kilometers was extremely distant. It was impossible for regular people to even cross a tenth of that in their lifetime, but to a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime like Mu Lin, it was only a matter of a few dozen seconds. Several million kilometers away, Tian Shuang collapsed in a wasteland powerlessly. She was pale. She had been heavily injured already, and then she burnt her essence blood to use a secret technique. Her vitality was sapped. However, she knew that this was nowhere near enough to escape from the pursuit of a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. Now that she faced potential death, she dared not rest. She immediately struggled to her feet, and with a flip of her hand, a white, jade disc, 30 centimeters across, appeared in her hand. She took out a 3-colored divine crystal and activated it. Immediately, the disc shone brightly and conjured a map. It gave off a power that could teleport people away. The map actually depicted the 5 regions of the cloud plane. Through the map, it was possible to see where the 5 regions were located, as well as the vast ocean that separated the regions. Tian Shuang pointed at the map, and in the next moment, she vanished after being enveloped by intense light. A teleportation formation disk? She actually has a teleportation formation disk on her. At the same time, Mu Lin stopped in the distance and revealed some slight surprise. "Whatever. I'll just spare you for now." He knew that it would be extremely troublesome to chase a primordial realm expert with a teleportation formation disk. Coupled with the fact that he did not want to spend so much time on someone unimportant, he just gave up. He immediately hurried back to the southern region with the 2 princesses. The God's Fallen clan resided in a great mountain range. It was enveloped by powerful formations, and it seemed like a sea of clouds from the outside. Suddenly, the space near the God's Fallen clan twisted. Tian Shuang fell out from the space there with a pale face. As soon as she arrived, she crushed a jade talisman. Before long, a man appeared from the sea of clouds. He seemed to be in his 30s. He had a resolute demeanor and a striking appearance. The man was an infinite prime. "Tian Shuang, what's wrong with you? Who injured you like this? How dare they?" The man had originally arrived here joyously, but when he saw how Tian Shuang was all bloodied, his expression immediately changed. He became pained and also felt great fury. A 9th heavenly layer infinite prime destroyed the imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire and abducted Xinger and Lana. Tian Shuang cut right to the chase, explaining everything that happened in just a few sentences. "That actually happened? How dare they? Xinger is the fiancé of one of Great Elder Luo Heping's great-grandsons, while Lanner is betrothed to young Master Luo Ingjian. Young Master Luo Ingjian is a direct descendant of the ancestor, who is bold enough to even abduct people of our God-Fallen clan." The man was furious. The God's Fallen clan was a clan that stood at the apex of the cloud plane. They possessed great status. Now that someone had actually come looking for trouble with them, the person in question was basically looking to die. So what if he's a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime? That's just a slightly larger ant in the eyes of our God's fallen clan. Tian Shuang, don't worry. I will report this to the great elders right now. Here's a God-tier pill. Heal up. With that, the man directly sent a message into the clan. He was a direct descendant of the God's fallen clan. His name was Luo Fei, and he was an infinite prime, so he possessed quite some status in the God's fallen clan. As a result, he could directly contact the great elders there. Any person who had the right to become a great elder in the God's fallen clan was a chaotic prime. Tian Shuang nodded. Her eyes were filled with hatred. The two other ancestors of the Xiandao Empire had died right before her, which filled her with resentment. If she wanted revenge, she had to go to the God's fallen clan. As a result, she was eager for the God's fallen clan to send chaotic primes sooner and kill Mu Lin. As Tian Shuang waited anxiously, an old man emerged from the God's fallen clan very soon. He wore black robes and his eyebrows were as straight as swords. His eyes shone brightly. He seemed very much like a soldier. However, he kept his presence concealed, so it was impossible to sense this chaotic prime. Greetings to the great elder. Tian Shuang rejoiced inside and immediately greeted him with clasped hands when she saw the old man. She knew the old man. He was one of the great elders of the God's fallen clan, Luo Heping. One of his great-grandsons had an engagement with Xing'e. Now that Xing'e had been kidnapped, it only made sense for Luo Heping to take action. Luo Heping nodded. He was rather cold, as if he did not take Tian Shuang seriously at all. I've already found this person's traces. Let's go. We'll capture him right now. No matter who he is and what his background is, we cannot spare him for opposing the God's fallen clan, said Luo Heping as if he looked down on everyone. Indeed, with the God's fallen clan's strength, they had the right to do so on the Cloud Plain. They were a member of the Righteous Alliance. Although the Righteous Alliance was known as one of the two rulers of the Cloud Plain along with the Four Symbols Alliance, everyone knew that the Righteous Alliance was actually far more powerful than the Four Symbols Alliance. However, just when they were about to set off, Luo Heping's expression changed slightly. A sliver of surprise appeared in his eyes, and his face changed rapidly. He became uncertain. Great Elder, what happened? Tian Shuang was alarmed. She stared at Luo Heping in bewilderment. Luo Heping suddenly fell silent. After quite a while, he said slowly, "From today onwards, our God's fallen clan is annulling our engagements with the two princesses of the Xiandao Empire." With that, Luo Heping turned around and vanished back into the God's fallen clan. He did not even look back. Tian Shuang was completely stunned. She blanked out. What is this all about? Luo Fei was stunned as well. He felt rather tongue-tied. He had never expected this to happen. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.